Chapter 4493, Divine Universe, who also has a virtual universe. Jian Wushuang frowned. In that moment, familiar faces flickered across Jian Wu's eyes. But Jian Wushuang thought for a long time and couldn't completely lock the person who was sent by the virtual universe. Miss Shuang, the husband just doubts whether the person exists, and the husband cannot be determined, so we don't need to think about it now. We just need to be cautious. When the war breaks out again, this person will naturally emerge water surface. Elder Luanshan said with a deep voice, "It makes sense." Qi Jian Wushuang converged his thoughts, nodded his head, and took over the bamboo tube handed to him by Ban Shan. This bamboo tube seems to be lightweight, but it is extremely heavy, but it is the hard work of Ban Shan tens of thousands of suji. Well, Wushuang, there is one more important thing when my husband comes this time. The elder Luanshan took a deep breath and then doubled his right hand again. He held a hexagonal red crystal ball in his palm. A sheer force of incomparable sheer force emanated from it. This is Qi Jian Wushuang's. I suddenly freeze. Elder Luanshan said diligently. Since the tens of thousands of virtual ages, the old man has spent most of his time researching this thing except for collecting news in the refining deities. This thing, the old man calls it a virtual force nucleus, which is formed by the most fundamental force in virtual force. As long as this virtual force nucleus is swallowed, the virtual force inside can instantly change the structure of your body, allowing you to become a true falsehood. After swallowing this nucleus of virtual force, not only will you derive the most iconic thing of virtual men, that is, virtual stars or virtual marks, but also awaken your associated supernatural powers, virtual explosion. And the most important thing is that if you want to be transformed into divine power, you only need one thought, and you can convert virtual power into divine power. The virtual explosion will not disappear, and it will be displayed in the way of divine power. As for the effect, old man, I have been practicing Shinzong this time, but I haven't used it yet, but I think it should not be too weak. The words fell, and Jian Wu's eyes suddenly rose 3 inches. This thing, it's amazing. It can be said that with the existence of this virtual force crystal nucleus, it will truly break the barrier between the virtual universe and the divine universe so that it will have a perfect fusion and sublime to the fullest, calculating by individual and by average strength. One of the great reasons why the virtual universe is stronger than the divine universe is because the virtual universe has a killer more than the man of the divine universe, that is, the virtual, associated supernatural power, virtual explosion, the horror of the virtual explosion. Even the sword Wushuang dare not to be underestimated. Its power is enough to compare all the moves in the Sword Warrior Tailu Sword Code, except 4 Seasons and Taro. What is this concept? Divine power universe, but not anyone can be compared with Jian Wushuang. I can say that in the same realm, if the person of the magical universe is not an arrogant monster, he has far more power than the same realm. And he will only be crushed in the face of the vein in the same realm. And this virtual force nucleus, but can give the person of the divine power universe, has the ability to resist the court of the virtual universe chamber. The preciousness of this thing can be seen from this. Wu Jianshuang looked at Elder Banshan again, with a little more admiration in his eyes. Miss Shuang, swallow this nucleus of virtual power. Swallow him, and you will be able to flow through the magical universe and the virtual universe without any flaws. Elder Luanshan said, "No way." Wu Jianshuang heard the words and shook his head. This is Elder Banshan, an invincible supremacy of tens of thousands of chaos ages. How can he try to figure it out? No need to talk nonsense. Since the old man asked you to take it, you take it, and Mo, Shui's daughter's delicate attitude. The elder Luanshan pushed the nucleus of virtual power into the hands of Jian Wushuang and immediately turned around and walked out. This Qi Jian Wushuang nodded silently and stowed it seriously when walking to the door of the corpse cave. Elder Banshan stepped a foot, then turned his head and said softly, "Miss Shuang, if you can really enter the land of God, if the old friends of the old man are still alive, remember to give them to the old man last sentence, 'My husband is fine now.' Don't miss it." After speaking, Elder Banshan no longer hesitated, and as soon as he stepped on, some thin and shy figures disappeared under the thin moonlight. Wu Jianshuang looked at the disappearing back of Elder Banshan, and there was a touch of complexity in his eyes. He suddenly remembered that in the annals of the divine universe, there was a record that a Taoist named Moving Mountains had once coveted the universe and suppressed 9 days and 10 places, but somehow the moving Taoists who were originally in the middle of the sky suddenly appeared in the universe, within bizarrely disappeared. I'm afraid that this is too old for the elder Banshan, who was a stranger who disappeared in the past. After the elder Luan Banshan left, Jian Wu sat down cross-legged and carefully looked at the hexagonal red crystal ball in front of him. Is there an empty mark, awakening the associated magical power burst? Wu Jian's eyes flashed a thought, and after a moment of contemplation, he no longer hesitated, swallowing his virtual crystal core. Boom! Instantly, a sharp pain came from the sword Wushuang deity. Even if Jian Wushuang is the top 3-body chaos body in ancient times, it is torn instantly, and the whole body is burned like it is thrown into a furnace of hundreds of millions of degrees. His Wu Jianshou could not help screaming, and the body burst completely. Next moment, the divine body was put together again, and the pain that seemed to distort the soul of the soul, with hundreds of millions of needles stuck in the pores, shattered his body again. In this broken way, Jian Wushuang could feel that an extremely horrific and powerful force was emitted from the core of the virtual force and began to change the life structure of Jian Wushuang little by little, pushing it towards the virtual soldier. After dozens of crashes and reorganizations, the pain suddenly disappeared. A completely different breath than Jian Wushuang before burst out from Jian Wushuang. "It's done." Wu Jian's face was pale and gasping slightly, and a lot of bean sweat beads condensed on his forehead. He glanced slightly sideways. On his left shoulder, 2 scarlet long marks like scars spread and twisted from his left shoulder. Wu Jianwushuang can feel that although he seems to have no change in the body and cultivation at this moment in the meditation, there is something different. Is this virtual power? Wu Jianshuang felt the imaginary force rolling in the body like a river and squinted his eyes. The next moment, instead of rushing to awaken the associated magical powers, he reached out and touched the black willow seal on his neck, pulling a sneer arc. "It's time to get rid of you." Chapter 4494, The Land of Gods, the void universe that came tens of thousands of void eras ago. They came from the same place as supreme martial artist Gongyang, and the others, all of them are at least at the 6th scar level, which means they are invincible supremes. One of them is several times stronger than the god-refining sect master. Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered, and his thoughts began to run quickly. The time axis of the void universe and the divine power universe that Jian Wushuang was in was similar. Tens of thousands of chaos cycles ago, it should have been around the time when the Great Catastrophe War had just ended. At that time, only that group of people had entered the void universe and had disappeared without a trace. Even though the god-refining sect master's words were rather obscure, to Jian Wushuang it was obvious. The palace master of the Divine Life Palace. If Jian Wushuang had guessed correctly, the alien race the god-refining sect master had mentioned was none other than the team led by the palace master of the Divine Life Palace that had disappeared into the void universe. Jian Wushuang's mind was filled with thoughts, but he pretended to be listening. He continued to listen to the sect master of the god-refining sect talk about the land of gods. He understood that this land of gods was very likely to be inextricably linked to the disappearance of the Divine Life Palace's palace master. When the identity of this group of foreign races was exposed, our void universe immediately summoned the giant arms of the great beings at the 6th scar level and above to kill these foreign races. This time, almost half of the 6th scar level void masters in our universe were gathered to fight with this group of alien races in the small ring star field. Speaking of which, although the cultivation base of this group of outsiders is similar to ours, other than the strongest person who can suppress the life source, the rest of them are weaker than us in terms of combat strength. Very soon, a great battle broke out. Almost all of the alien races were killed, and only the strongest of these aliens managed to escape with 2 or 3 people. Then, I don't know what kind of technique the strongest person used, but he actually dominated a star field and refined it into a forbidden area. He set up 999 restrictions, locking himself and the remaining 2 or 3 6 scar level experts in it. Not only was he unable to take a step out, but we also couldn't get in no matter how hard we tried. Moreover, the higher one's cultivation is, the stronger the rejection force will be when they step into the forbidden area. On the contrary, those with lower cultivation will not trigger the terrifying restrictive spells that can kill immortals and gods. As time passed, that forbidden land was left behind. We called it the Land of Gods, the God-refining sect master said slowly. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang could not help but squint his eyes. He finally knew the whereabouts of the Divine Palace master. Back then, outside the Divine Life Palace, Overlord Patriarch had said that the palace master of the Divine Life Palace had been trapped somewhere in the void universe. He must have been referring to this land of gods. It was no wonder that the palace master of the Divine Life Palace could not return. Lord Sect Master, the mission you mentioned must be related to the land of gods, right? Jian Wushuang asked despite knowing the answer. That's right. The sect master of the god, refining sect nodded and replied in a deep voice. It's been tens of thousands of void eras since that group of foreign people was trapped in the land of gods, and our Lord Void God used a great divine ability to seal off all the energy supplies in that area. In other words, those foreign people who were heavily injured will never recover from their injuries. For the first tens of thousands of void eras, we could still sense that the outsiders were trying to break through the seal and escape, but in the last 10,000 void eras, they've quieted down. They've never tried to break through the seal again. They're probably already like a lamp that's on its last legs. Wushuang, your mission this time is to enter the restriction and see what the situation is like. First, your cultivation is only at the star level, so the restrictions inside will not be triggered at all, and you can walk in safely. That group of outsiders has been worn down by tens of thousands of void eras. Even if they haven't fallen, they probably don't have much power left, so they won't be much of a threat to you. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and thought for a moment. He nodded and replied, I understand. Very good. Then, Wushuang, you may leave first. You're not the only one going to the land of gods to explore this time. I'll also choose some disciples from the sect to go with you. Other than that, I'm afraid that the other top forces will also send their own heaven's favorites. Don't be careless and embarrass the God-refining sect, the sect master said slowly. Yes. After a few more words from the God-refining sect master, Jian Wushuang took his leave. After returning to the corpse cave on the top of the limestone mountain, Jian Wushuang immediately opened a ward to seal off all auras. To him, even if the God-refining sect master did not allow him to go to the land of gods, he would still find a reason to go. The palace master of the Divine Life Palace had stayed in the void universe for tens of thousands of chaos cycles. Even if he had been trapped in the land of gods for nearly all his time, he must have known a lot about the void universe. This was of utmost importance. In addition, Jian Wushuang also had some doubts and wanted to ask the palace master of the Divine Life Palace, provided that the palace master had not died. For example, what was going on with his life level? The more he cultivated, the more he realized that his life level as a special life form far surpassed that of a perfect special life form. Or rather, it was not a perfect level special life form at all. His life level had far surpassed the perfect level. After that, Jian Wushuang used the token given to him by the Cosmos God to activate the water mirror and report the matter to Cosmos God. Regarding the land of gods, Cosmos God did not seem surprised. It was obvious that he had already known about this. He only told Jian Wushuang to be careful and then hung up the call. It was late at night. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged on the stone bed and refined the tarot divine corpse. Knock, knock, knock. Just as Jian Wushuang was immersed in his cultivation and preparing to go to the land of gods, an unexpected person came and knocked on the door of Jian Wushuang's corpse cave. After removing the magic barrier, Jian Wushuang frowned and looked out of the corpse cave's door. He was suddenly stunned. Outside the corpse cave, under the blood-colored moonlight, an old man with white hair and a white beard, his face full of age spots, was standing quietly at the entrance of the corpse cave with his hands behind his back. Elder Panshan? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and asked in confusion. Panshan, one of the 5 great grand elders. What was he doing here? Wushuang, I have something to tell you. Am I not welcome? Panshan's expression was indifferent. He glanced at Jian Wushuang and said, Elder Panshan, what are you saying? Come in and sit. Jian Wushuang smiled and shook his head. He then stood up and extended his hand to invite Elder Panshan to enter the corpse cave. Chapter 44:95. Qi Yandan. This person is the sole candidate for the refining of the sect of sect. The Lord has already decided on Ku Cheng Datong. But with the advent of Jian Wushuang and the banquet held in the sovereign's hall that day, the dispute between Yandan and Jian Wushuang made the refining god's Lord gradually disappointed with Yandan. Sensitive, irritable, hard-working, narrow-minded, so happy there is no city. This is the Yandan that the sovereign Lord saw at the banquet that day. I ask, how can such a person take control of a sacred place to glory? That day, he didn't go to point out these things, but it was Yandan who said what he said. He was still his big disciple. He couldn't scold him in front of Manchu, and if he liked himself all speaking out, Yandan will inevitably be imbalanced and secretly resentful. Resentment, refining the Lord of God does not matter, but it is not necessary. On the contrary, Jian Shuang's performance that day made him feel a little different. I am not humble or overbearing, and look at ease. At the same time, the master of the refining looked at Jian Wushuang, and he could not help but utter a sentence from the bottom of his heart. There are thousands of thunders in your heart, but those who face the quiet lake can worship the general too. The extraordinary talent represents the highest growth limit of Jian Wushuang, and the extraordinary mind represents Jian Wushuang. He will never bring the refining Shenzong into a place of no end. For a moment, by shower reduced, and the candidate of the next refining God sovereign began to lean in the heart of the 8 poles. There was silence in the hall. The master of the refining God did not speak, and other people naturally did not dare to hustle. After a short while, the refining suzerain only said lightly, "This suzerain summoned you today. Presumably, you also know why." He said the words fell, and the crowd had not spoken yet. Seeing Yandan step forward and said, "Master Zong, I guess the mission is about to start?" "Yes." The Lord of the refining God nodded, then looked at the crowd, and Shun Sheng said, "The Lord has just received the news. Other sectarian forces have sent their disciples to the land of God." Land of God. Yes. Wu Jinshuang, Fu Chun, and Yen Dan all bowed their heads. At this moment, they don't know where they are. The three of them are the candidates to go to the land of the gods this time. Shuang Shuang, Shuang Shuang, when you leave Lianshenzhou, I see you die. Wu Yenden bowed his head and leaned towards Jian Wushuang. His mouth sneered. A poisonous plan breeds in his heart. Jiang has no double-sided and expressionless, but also has a good idea in mind. If this Yen Dan acted obediently along the way, if he wanted to commit stupidity himself, he wouldn't mind sending him a ride. Well, let's all three of you. Be sure to remember that everything is compulsory, and be careful all the time to prevent others from the sect. The master of the refining Shenzong Shen opened his mouth, then through his big sleeve. A giant bird resembling a bone dragon flew from the mountain behind the refining Shenzong. This giant bird has no hair, no flesh, only white bones and black eyes. At its back, a high platform is built, which makes people set foot. The three swords of Wujin Wushuang stepped on one foot and immediately flew up, landing on the high platform at the back of the giant bird. Moaning, this giant bird stretched out his head and shouted, and immediately carried a shuttle of Jian Wushuang and other people directly over 180,000 miles, left the Lianshenzhou, and blasted towards the land of Fengshan. Master Su Lian took a deep look at the place where the three swordsmen disappeared, shook his head, and recovered his eyes after a long while. Strolling in the hall, Elder Banshan also looked at the disappeared three people for a long time. Refining Shenzong Presbyterian Hall, the residence of the elder Shen Xia. Da-da-da. There was a rush of footsteps. A close disciple of an elder sickle walked in hurriedly. Master, just now Yandan has been with Wu Shuang and Fuchen driving a giant bone bird, and left the refining gods. The trusted disciple knelt on the ground and whispered, "Oh, is this gone?" In the center of the hall, the elder sickle sitting cross-legged opened his eyes, and a flash of sharpness flashed in his eyes. "Okay, Elder Ben will go now. If the Lord Susie asks where the elder has gone, you say that the elder has recently come to realize it and went out to seek breakthrough opportunities. Understand?" "Disciple, understand." This trusted disciple quickly returned. "Okay." Nodded with satisfaction. The elder Shenxian stood up, stepped on his foot, and disappeared into the elder's hall. Missed double. This time the land of God is where your bones are buried. In the void, the voice of Sun Lung from the elder sickle was heard. At the same time, not far from the Lianshenzhou, there is a bright star. This place is close to the void forbidden area, but this is the place where the largest star thief group, the Red Whale Gang, is located in the nearby hundreds of millions of stars. This group of star thieves is notorious. They robbed the passers-by who passed by in the starry sky all year round. The entire virtual universe gnashed their teeth, but they could not do anything about it. The reason is because the head of this Red Whale Gang is a four-marked vanity. Under the leadership of this four-marked virtual honor, the entire Red Whale Gang helped to the extreme. Even the even-marked virtual warrior saw a headache for a while, and he could obediently use his treasures to fight against the difficulties. The head of the Red Whale Gang is similar to the abdomen of a big whale among the stars. At this moment, in the original Red Whale Gang, the astounding head of the imaginary universe is daring, but he is obediently kneeling at the foot of a silver-haired young pupil. Ice mast, small. When the news is received, the land of the gods is opened, and the people of the main forces of the virtual universe have sent all the Tianjiao disciples under the door to the land of gods to break the restrictions and look for the universe. Alien! The big master shivered, and the atmosphere didn't dare to breathe. I can see that this big master is extremely afraid of this silver-haired young man. "Okay." Tong Yinfa Bing Tong's youth nodded expressionlessly and asked, "Luo Ming, Is this person asking you to send someone to practice the sword warriors? Inquire by Shinzong. Master Hui Bingbing, I have been asked by the younger. There is no one named Jian Wushuang in the disciples of Lian Shinzong. Instead, there is a person named Mist Shuang. Through this selection of entry disciples, he entered the Lian Shinzong. www.novel is a rare qualification for refining the Emperor Shinzong. Miss Double. The silver-haired young pupil narrowed his eyes, sneered at the corner of his mouth, and said to himself, Jian Wushuang, you are so fatal that you haven't died that day, but entered the refining gods sect by concealing the sky and the sea. What superb qualification has he become? Disciple of Tianjiao. He shook his head, and Yinfa Bingtong's youthful words turned sharply, and he continued to ask, I ask you, how is the situation of Wushuang now? Wushuang, back to master, according to the small eyeliner return, that Wushuang has left the refining Shinzong and followed the other two disciples to the land of God's seal. He went to the land of God. Yinfa Bingtong youth frowned, and then laughed. Okay, sword unparalleled. Then this seat is waiting for you in the land of the gods. After saying that, he bowed his head toward the original big gang of the Red Whale and instructed, Luo Ming, get ready, it'll wait to go to the land of the gods. Yes. Grandpa resigned in congratulations. After Tongda headed down, the silver-haired ice pupil looked up, looking far away from the void, and there was a sense of coldness in his eyes. For this person, it is as if he and the sword Wushuang entered the icy supreme universe of the virtual universe. Chapter 4496. At the same time, farther from Lian Shinzong, in the heart of a star, an old man with an elegant temperament, a clear face, and a cautious look, slowly exhaled a stale air. It's been a long time, and those who purify me and kill me should have gone. The old man narrowed his eyes, and thoughts flashed in his eyes. He is not someone else. It is precisely in the selection of the disciples of refining gods to escape the birth of the Ram Supreme. On that day, when the disciple was selected, he saw that his identity had been taken apart and ran away first. However, he was fatal and escaped from the hands of several trace-level virtual men. Later, he got into the closed heart of the earth and has been in retreat until now. Hey, streams of light passed over the stars. Immediately, the Ram Supreme heard a discussion sounding from the mouth of the passing figure. Have you heard that the ban on the land of the gods is loosening this time? Each case has sent Zhong Nijio to the land of the gods to find out. I heard that the land of God hides a big secret. Shoot, babble. I vaguely heard that in the land of God, suppress people who are not our universe. What? Not people in our universe? Is there another universe? Be quiet. I heard one of our ancestors talk about this, but it's a secret of the heavens. Don't tell it. The discussion sounded, and the ram, who was hiding deep in the earth's heart, raised an eyebrow. Seal the land. Suppress people who are not in this universe. The ram's eyes flashed faintly, feeling like he had grasped some big secret. Looks like I must go through this land of God. I don't know what happened to Jian Wushuang and others after all these years. Did they escape and hunt that day? While his thoughts flickered, the ram treated himself to the high altitude. When one person placed an order, his right hand broke through the ground and turned into a giant hand. Boom! The single vanity was a 7-star vanity with a large elephant trunk and fan ears. Looking at the huge hand shadow that suddenly broke through the sky and covered the sky, it was too late to use the virtual technique to resist, and he was arrested. Hold it in the palm of your hand. Soon, the ram deep in the heart of the earth rose to the sky, opened up the kingdom of God, and threw it in. After a while, The Ram Supreme stepped out of the void with satisfaction, and he had got the news he wanted. The land of God, the old man is here. Ah! The next moment, he stomped with his right foot, and the whole man burst out, rushing away in the direction of Fengshen. Within the virtual universe, with the loosening of the ban on the land of the gods, many top forces sent Tianzhao in the zone to the land of the gods to find out. Therefore, the universe became very lively at once. In the vast sky, a bird with open wings and huge bones, thousands of feet wide, is moving fast. Its speed was extremely fast. Its body was moving forward hundreds of thousands of miles. Its wings cut through the void, and it made a huge sound boom. Jian Wushuang's negative hand was standing on the high platform at the back of the bone. Because the speed was too fast, the strong wind generated across the face like a knife. This strong wind is extremely sharp. If it is an ordinary starburst, it is purely physical resistance, for fear that it will be blown away by this strong wind. However, this terrifying wind is only able to blow Jian Wushuang's hair, not even a trace of white marks on him. Fu Chun among the three was not so easy to deal with the wind, and he saw that he could only run the virtual force continuously to form a protective cover to constantly resist this divine power. He looked at Yen Dan and Jian Wushuang, who were safe and sound on the high platform. Yen Dan is able to resist this smashing wind. He is not surprised. After all, Yen Dan has already broken through to the mark level, and the difference between mark level and virtual level is like Ruoxian fan. And this sword is unparalleled, and the realm is almost the same as him. How can it be so easy to resist this gust of wind? Fu Chun couldn't help but think secretly that he was able to show his talents in the Zongmen disciples, but I was afraid that there was a large part of the reason because the Wushuang did not participate in the contest. Yen Dan stood behind Jian Wushuang, and his lips kept humming. He was hesitating whether to kill the sword without double-clicking now. Just now his father, Elder Shunxian, has sent him a letter. Elder Shunxian has left the refining Shenzong and is rushing towards them. It won't be long before the two can merge. The Elder Sickle is a 3-mark practice. Yen Dan was confident. By the time, with the power of his father Shunxian, the two would work together to kill the sword unparalleled but to turn things over. After thinking a long time, well, wait until you return from the land of gods, and then find a chance to kill this child. Yen Dan's eyes flashed, and he took a deep breath, eliminating his immediate intention to kill the sword without double-clicking. Standing in front of the high platform, facing back to Yen Dan's sword, Wushuang naturally felt Yen Dan's fleeting, murderous power. Shaking his head, Jian Wushuang didn't focus on his heart and continued to look up. After almost a year, a lonely starry sky gradually became lively. In addition to the huge bone birds stepped by the 3 swordsmen Wushuang, some strange means of transportation also came from all directions. For example, a giant golden yellow gourd sits on the gourd with a group of young people wearing black long coats, with raised eyes on the eyebrows. At the top of the gourd, a vertical flag is inserted and the letters Tianmen are written. Oh, are these rabbits from Tianmen here? Yen Dan narrowed his eyes and made a cold hum in his mouth. And this group of disciples also saw the 3 Yen Dan standing on the huge bone birds and sneered at the corners of their lips. Isn't this the defeat of Zongmen at the Zongmen Exchange Contest that year? It seems that there is no one in refining Shenzong, so that such a role has led the team into the land of gods. He shook his head while talking, with a look of contempt. It can be seen that the two obviously have long been hostile. The words fell. Yen Dan's face suddenly became gloomy. Xian Kong, the heroes don't mention the bravery of the year, and the momentary victory is nothing. We have done it again this time. Yen Dan said a little ugly. Ha ha ha, how difficult is it? Don't cry this time, and call your old ghost father to save you." The leader of the gate of this day laughed loudly and then led the team away. Jack, looking at the proudly leaving Tianmen team, Yen Dawn eyes flashed. When his eyes turned, he saw Jian Wushuang smiled at him with a smile, and he was so angry that he suddenly exclaimed, "Miss Shuang, what are you doing to me? I tell you that the door and our refining Shinzong have always been hostile. If you have anything to do with me, you're not half good." Chapter 44:97. Time is in a hurry, and the time is over. Along the way, Jian Wushuang Yandan and others saw a lot of disciples from all directions. These popular Yuxuanang, with a strong spirit, have been repaired to an average of more than 6 stars, and even the strong ones have reached the mark level. But the highest, that is, a mark, because the cultivation is higher, the greater the face of the prohibition and rejection of that land of God. Many of them recognized Yandan, either friendly or cold-hearted, and can see that the refining Shinzong is still quite famous in the virtual universe. A moment later, a huge star field appeared in front of everyone. The land of gods is here. I saw that around this star field, countless battleships or flying magics swept the void, and the Tianjiao disciples from the top sectarian forces were waiting for each other, waiting for the weakest restraint in this land of gods. Is this the land of God? Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and looked up. This land of gods is said to be a star field, but it is actually inappropriate because it consists of a matrix of forbidden formations. A total of 99 bands. Each prohibition is like a halo of discs blocking everything, and a total of 99 prohibitions are superimposed and integrated together, which immediately forms a horrifying formation of immortality. On the 99 bands, Xianhui permeated and slightly twisted, and directly annihilated the void, forming a 10-foot wide void belt to isolate all vitality. These 99 bands blocked all the way in, and also cut off the way out. According to Elder Moose Wind, the power of these 99 bands, even if it is a 6-marked vanity, has to be peeled if it is immortal, and it can only be withdrawn halfway. Going in one step, it will instantly disappear and disappear. Its horror is evident. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and felt the 99 forbidden breaths, but he felt extremely familiar. This is the taste of divine power. In addition, he also felt a special breath of life with him at the origin of the 99 bands. This made him determined that he would arrange the 99 forbidden people who made the entire virtual universe helpless. If he did not guess wrong, it would be the one who had no information and had lost tens of thousands of lives in Chaos Lord of the Palace Shrine. For a moment, Jian Wushuang's heart was filled with emotion. He began to expect that the Lord of the Palace of Life Palace had not fallen yet, and the two could meet in this land of gods. Time passes slowly. The crowd did not move, but began to wait for the 99th time when the prohibition was the weakest, and then quickly entered. Gradually, there are constantly Tianjiao disciples from the top Zongmen walking into this land of gods. Rumble. A bonito flag hung with a spur bone. A huge boat like a whale broke from the distance and was overwhelming and staring across the stars. In this huge boat, there was a wild laugh. Little bunnies, we're here for the red whale. The red whales are acting, everyone is away. Quack, quack, this land of gods, we red whale helped occupy. I saw countless robbers staring at the arrogant disciples in the gates of this boat, laughing loudly. On the deck of this boat, the ice-cold pupil of the silver-haired Bingtong stood supremely with a hand full of pride. Behind him, the original head of the Red Whale Club, Ming Luo, bowed his knees, slightly lowered his hands, and wherever there was a half-point thief that ran across the universe, he was respectful like an old servant. Everyone looked at the Red Whale gang that came out of nowhere. Their pupils shrank, and their faces slightly changed. The stars of the red whale are stolen. This bunch of rotten fish and rotten shrimp, why are they everywhere? Damn, what are these cuckoo sticks doing to seal the land of gods? And who is that standing on the deck? Why are the great heads of the red whale gang standing behind, as if to worship the master? Many disciples of the Holy Land sect whispered, "The red whale helps these star thieves, which is too infamous in the virtual universe. They are not strong in individual strengths, but they work in groups using means, and there is a foremark master Luo Ming, who is the head of the cattle, can be described as extremely difficult. Even if some traces of vanity fall into their hands, if they are not good, they will hate the spot." They never thought of why the red whale gang appeared here. Moreover, looking at it like that, it seems that the red whale gang has changed hands. The silver-haired, ice-pupil young man standing on the deck was as impassable as a mountain, unfathomable. It is estimated that it will only be stronger than Luo Ming, the original red whale. Thinking of this, everyone couldn't help looking at each other. Their hearts were sinking. If this group of red whale gangs waited until they entered the land of the gods, they stood at the exit and robbed them in the fire, then it was over. Skeleton on the platform, Jian Wushuang, also looked up and looked at the gang of red whale gang members. How can he not see the person headed on the deck? This silver-haired young Bingtong is not Bingyu Supreme, or who? Bingyu Supreme also noticed the sword unparalleled standing on the back of the giant bone bird. The enmity between the two has spread from the divine universe to the void universe and has already reached the point of immortality. At this moment, the enemies faced each other, and the eyes of the two gathered in the air, which immediately gave birth to a fierce, invisible spark. A sneer sneered gradually at the corner of Bingyu Supreme's mouth. His lips lightly opened. He opened his mouth silently towards the sword and spit out 8 words. The sword had no expression on both sides, and he recognized these 8 characters. Seal the land of God and fight it. Jian Wushuang couldn't help flashing a cold rush in his eyes. Originally, when he first entered the virtual universe, he also wanted to temporarily put aside his old hatred of the Bingyu Supreme. After all, the divine power of the universe was ahead of him, but life and death could not be more than a thought. No old hatred of the old hatred could be compared with the endangered universe. But this Bingyu Supreme, however, entered this virtual universe, and then he was selected by the introductory disciple of the refining God sect, and he wished to put him to death. It is intolerable, he is unparalleled, but he has never been a soft egg of the Virgin. Okay, then in this land of God, settle the new hatred and the old hate together. Jian Wushuang murmured to himself. A flash of icy murderous flashed in his eyes. Red whales help the boat. Master Bingao, the kid who refines Shenzong, is Wushuang. Does this kid have a holiday with the adult? Do you need to shoot now and kill him in place? The Red Whale Gang leader Luo Ming, who stood behind Bingyu Supreme like an old servant, noticed the collision of Bingyu Supreme and Jian Wushuang's eyes. Just because you want to kill him? Bingyu Supreme looked down at Luo Ming and shook his head disdainfully. Immediately, a bitter resentment poured into his eyes. This man must be killed by me. I want to peel him and cramp and feel the worst torture in the world. Luo Ming, bowing her head, heard the words, and her heart trembled. What great hatred is between the two men. Let's go into the land of the gods first. This battle with this person is inevitable today. Let's do it in the land of the gods. After a moment, Bingyu Supreme took a deep breath. His expression gradually returned to calmness, and said lightly, Chapter 4498, Time Walk. A horrible coercion spread from the land of the gods. More and more people gathered outside the land of the gods. Everyone is waiting for the 99th ban, to be the weakest. This is the rule that tens of thousands of people in the virtual universe have found out from these 99 prohibitions since the Qian dynasty. There is a lack of heaven, and it is naturally impossible for these 99 bands to reach a complete state of completeness. According to countless powerful deductions and calculations in these tens of thousands of virtual periods, it is learned that the 99 prohibitions continue to operate, but every hundreds of virtual periods, this overlaps, and the continuously running 919 bands, there will be a separation of a jaw stick time. And these 99 prohibitions will have a weakest channel entrance during this time of separation of Huixiang. As long as it is modified to be shallow, it will most likely not trigger the destructive power of the immortality into the abdomen of the land of the gods. Now, everyone is waiting for the moment when the 99 band is separated. In the void, an old man with a clean and elegant face looked silently at Jian Wushuang and Bingyu Supreme. He emerged from the earth's heart, and then came the Supreme Ram. Well, when the four of them entered the virtual universe together. Now it looks like this. Jian Wushuang entered the refining God sect and became a Tianjiao disciple like Sun Zhongtian, and the Bingyu Supreme became the leader of one party, but I was alone. You can only hide in the dark. It's terrible. The Ram supremely touched his short beard, shook his head for a while, and sighed. But looking at it this way, it seems that Lingyu guy didn't escape. Thinking of Lingyu, he was silent for a while. Just wait until you get into the land of God, and then look for a chance to see if you can get online with them. After thinking for a while, the Ram Supreme decided not to move and waited until he entered the land of the gods. 3 more days passed. All of them opened their eyes wide and were reluctant to slack off for a moment, for fear of missing the 99 forbidden separation. Rumble! In the heaven and earth universe, the 99 prohibitions roll like a grinding disc, releasing horrific power, crushing the void, and then exploding. These 99 prohibitions are like the 99 apertures that overlap, and together they can destroy the world, but with their circulation. Finally, the 99 band, there was a short separation. A narrow entrance appeared in front of everyone. It's now. Instantly, countless people flashed out of their eyes, stepped on their feet, and rushed into the land of God. At this moment, the starry sky is covered by the phoenix gods. Countless dark shadows run through the imaginary force, burst into the sky, and rush into this entrance. At the moment when Jian Wushuang and Bingyu Supreme appeared, the footsteps soared into the sky, and they shot towards the entrance. The two looked at each other, sparks sparkling in their eyes, and the fighting spirit was surging. For the two, this time into the land of the gods. Their opponents are only each other. These virtual universe people will be rejected by these prohibitions, but they will not, because these 99 prohibitions are based on the strength of virtual power to determine the power of the prohibition. Therefore, the higher the cultivation in the virtual universe, the harder it is to enter the land of the god, and the greater the counterattack force, the lower the cultivation is, the more likely it is to hide the sky and trigger the prohibition. For Jian Wushuang and Bingyu Supreme, as long as they release their divine power, they will naturally be unobstructed. Boom! Suddenly, dozens of notes of light hit the entrance of the land of the god. After Jian Wushuang and Bingyu Supreme left, the figure of Ram Supreme emerged from the void, followed closely, and entered the land of the gods. Originally still a black and sealed place, it suddenly became quiet, and only the Red Whale Gang yelled on the Red Whale Gang boat. A few hours later, a ray of gods blasted from a distance. The void shattered, revealing its blue shirt fluttering, the sickle supreme like a sickle. Did you go in? God Scythe narrowed his eyes and immediately stood at the exit of the land of Sealing God, sitting cross-legged. He made up his mind. As soon as the sword Wushuang came out, he immediately shot, and killed the sword Wushuang Thunder to prevent future troubles. Within the land of God, Jian Wushuang and others flew in footsteps, extremely fast, constantly shuttled through the ban, and blasted towards the center of the land of the gods. The area of Fengshen was vast, but it was created by the master of the Palace of Life and other people who occupied a star area and banned it by exerting great magical powers. Soon, the first prohibition was pouring in like a tide. Although silent, the terrifying coercion, like the river and the sea, swept across all directions, and the arrogance of many virtual universes felt the coercion, all of them pale. Is this the power of the original restraint? Everyone shivered in their hearts and quickly converged, turning it into a piece of rotten wood, letting this prohibition sweep over them. Laugh. The prohibition swept across the body, but it was as if no one had been found. Sure enough, everyone looked at each other, and there was a rush of ecstasy in their hearts. Suddenly, everyone stepped up faster and flashed forward. Only those who truly came out of the top sex and had extraordinary insights into the sky sneered in their hearts. How easy was it to pass this land of God? Now it is safe, just because it is still at the outermost part of the land of God. And once deepened, these prohibitions will gradually become sensitive and release the same, terrorize the lasers and kill them one by one. Jian Wushuang, Yan Dan, and Fu Chen all flew in the middle position. Fu Chen's expression was dignified. The atmosphere didn't dare to breathe, and he was not far behind, followed by others, and after confirming the safety ahead, he followed the steps of others. And Yan Dan, from time to time, looked at Jian Wushuang. His eyes flickered fiercely at first glance. He was unhappy, holding on to some bad water, ready to trip Jian Wushuang. The sword is double-sided and expressionless, and he can naturally feel the maliciousness from Yan Dan body, but to him, Yan Dan is like the ants. You can pinch yourself with just one thought. His biggest opponent, this time in the land of God, there is only one person, and that is the ice-cold Supreme that looks at him in the distance. Ah, the crowd was extremely fast, and they continued to fly forward, and quickly passed the outermost void. If you divide the land of the gods into 3 levels, they have now passed the first level. Suddenly, what? Located in the forefront of this group, there was a sudden terrifying scream. Chapter 44:99. A dash! The scream screamed loudly from the very front of the group that entered the land of gods. What happened? What happened? What's up? Suddenly, everyone was sprinting in the footsteps, and his face was startled. It looks like someone has killed the ban ahead of time. Everyone quickly looked up and saw the first arrogant 8-star virtuoso who was rushing at the first, and the aperture laser that was split horizontally and vertically, just like a tofu, was cut directly from the waist and cut into countless pieces. The annihilation force carried in the forbidden aperture directly destroyed this Tianjiao disciple, and the dead cannot die anymore. Seeing this scene, everyone in the presence took a breath of cold air, scalp tingling for a while. The person who fell just now is not an unknown junior, but the first disciple of the gray primitive in the center of the virtual universe. He is also one of the arrogant arrogants in the universe. He unexpectedly died here, silently. For a while, the original people were still relaxed, and their hearts sank immediately. At this time, they only remembered that the land of God was a 6-mark vanity, a death-forbidden place that they dare not easily enter. The extremely fast pace suddenly slowed down. Everyone carefully fumbled, marching forward, and continued to deepen the land of God. After a while, what? Another scream came, and a Tianjiao disciple died again in the power of restraint. This makes everyone feel cold, and the pace that has become extremely slow has become like walking on thin ice. However, Rao is so unable to prevent death. From the death of this second disciple, death and fall, like a chain reaction, continue to happen. The iris radiates a faint white on, sweeping continuously from all directions. The iris speed is still not fast at first, but as people continue to deepen, the speed suddenly becomes faster and faster. This circle is blank like a beheading head, silently harvesting the lives of everyone present. Suddenly, the entire land of the gods was screaming and shouting, and everyone began to urge the virtual power supernatural powers, constantly moving around, avoiding this white circle of light. However, with the successive outbreak of virtual power, the circle formed by the power of the prohibition was blank, and the speed of harvesting life suddenly became faster. A circle of Baimang chopped it diagonally. Jian Wushuang slightly tilted his head and easily escaped. Yen Dan, who is behind Jian Wushuang, is also easy to deal with, without putting much pressure on him. But dusting was difficult, and the response was extremely panic with sweat on his forehead, just when the second by Mang slashed straight towards Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was just about to dodge. Miss Shuang, here today is your buried place. Virtual explosion dash. Suddenly, Yen Dan behind Jian Wushuang sneered. His eyes flashed fiercely, countless red virtual forces condensed in his hands, and formed a red ball the size of a basketball, slamming towards Jian Wushuang. What he waited for was this moment. Now, this moment has finally arrived. The first step is the power of horrific restraint to destroy the gods, and the next step is his fierce attack. He is confident that Jian Wushuang has no way to go, and his death is coming. In the distance, I have been watching the Bingyu Supreme for this scene, and I couldn't help raising my eyebrows and immediately laughed. Swords warriors. It seems that this seat is not just waiting to see you. Even the refining Shinzong you just entered, there are brothers and sisters who want to kill you, and then quickly to be a man to you failed. Shaking his head, Bingyu Supreme did not rush to shoot. He knew Jian Wushuang, and naturally knew that the sight in front of him could not pose any threat to Jian Wushuang. Now is not the time for him to fight with Jian Wushuang. Is it? Feeling the near burst of power behind him, smashing at him quickly, Jian Wushuang's brow slightly lifted. The whole Bodis virtual force was transformed into divine power, and he turned to look at Yen Dan. He faced the calmness of his face, whether it was the oblique circle from the oblique splatter, or the virtual explosive ball that was severely dropped. Ha ha ha, is this ready to die? Yen Dan suddenly laughed when he saw this. When he saw this, his pupils shrank. However, at this moment, he can hardly protect himself. How can he be a champion for the sword, unparalleled? He could not help but sigh slightly. Laugh. Next moment, Yen Dan's smile freezes suddenly, and his body freezes. Fuchen was also dumbfounded, with an incredible expression on his face. I saw that the forbidden force that beheaded countless Tianjiao fell to Jian Wushuang's position about 3 inches, and it seemed that he saw the breath of Jian Wushuang. It was actually a turn, and he opened the sword slightly. This is not the end. The virtual explosive ball that was blasted out by Yen Dan and destroyed all was actually held out by Jian Wushuang and grasped directly. Immediately, sword Wushuang closed with 5 fingers and grasped gently. Boom! This exploding orb crashed directly. How can this be? Yen Dan stared blankly at Jian Wushuang, trembling. His eyes were full of ghost-like horror, and he almost fell from the air. This. Fu Chen also opened his mouth wide, his expression shocked to himself. Fog double. How did it happen? I just want to be alone, but why do you want to die? The sword looked down at Yen Dan without expression on both sides, and there was no emotion in his eyes. What I just did seems to be a trivial matter for sword warriors. Yen Dan swallowed his saliva, and for a moment he didn't know how to speak. A big terror between life and death came to him like a rolling wave. Facing Jian Wushuang's indifferent eyes, Yen Dan fell like an ice cellar, and his liver and gallbladder were cracked. A trace of virtual power seemed to be imprisoned by all, making him not even do a simple struggle. Become more familiar in your next life. Shaking his head, Jian Wushuang's fingers flicked. An immense force surging shot from Jian Wushuang's fingertips. A muffled noise came out. Yen Dan head and eyebrow center position was suddenly pierced by a blood cave with finger thickness. Puff! Yen Dan pupils gradually collapsed. Her face lost her figure, and she fell stiffly. Feng Rui's fierce sword Qi has already destroyed his source of life in an instant. Puff, puff. At the next moment, the iris formed by countless restraining forces came, cutting Yen Dan into countless pieces. One finger spike. Fu Chen's eyes looked at the scene in shock, a cool air straight from the back of his head. Suddenly, the entire back of Fu Chen was wet with cold sweat. Chapter 4500. Yen Dan, who has broken through the marks, led by the disciples of refining God sect, was killed by Jian Wushuang in one finger. Su Fuchen stared at Jian Wushuang dully, his throat rolling, and he kept swallowing. What a big deal. A big deal is coming. The main disciple of the refining Shenzong master, the next master of the refining Shenzong chosen by the suzerain, was killed by Jian Wushuang in this way. What strength is this missed double? Sun Fuchen's eyes were frightened, and his legs were shaking. Next moment, he saw Jian Wushuang's eyes falling on him. This could make him shiver uncontrollably, and his heart was cold. I didn't see anything. Sun Fuchen swallowed his throat, and his trembling subconscious blurted out. Qi Jianhui's eyes flickered slightly, looking at Fu Chen with a look of horror, could not help but feel a little dumb. Is he afraid of killing himself? He shook his head, and Jian Wushuang didn't care about him. As soon as he stepped on his feet, he suddenly blasted toward the center of Fengshan like a cannonball. Far away, a group of disciples who had had a quarrel with Yen Dan outside the land of the gods noticed this scene, and suddenly their pupils shrank. Yen Dan, did he die in the hands of the same door? There was a dignified meaning in the eyes of the first disciple of Tianmen, and then he turned to look at a Tianmen disciple next to him and asked, Tianxian, I have been retreating before. I do know the external affairs. Disciple? Who is that person? The disciples next to the first disciple heard the words and replied with respect. Master, you don't know. I heard that this time the selection of initiating disciples of the religious sect has appeared, and there is a demon of inferior qualifications called Wushuang. This is the person who wants to come. Miss Double. The first apprentice at Tian raised an eyebrow and smiled. This person is a bit better than Yanden's waist. After saying that, the first disciple shook his head, paused for a moment, and then groaned. The refining Shenzong and our Tianmen have always been at odds, and now Yen Dan is dead. I'm afraid that this person is very likely to become the patriarch of the future refining Shenzong. If there is a chance later, it would be better to kill this crowd. Yes, the disciple nodded quickly. The other side, Sun Bingxian, looked at this scene supremely, with a touch of irony in the corners of his mouth. This sword Wushuang is really a disaster star, and it will happen wherever it goes. The next moment, he stepped on his right foot and immediately turned into a skyward sword, chasing straight towards the sword. The end of the crowd. The cricket ram extremely touched his nose and grinned at the corner of his mouth. Neither of these people is the master of cessation. He shook his head. He also flew in the same shape, turned into a bright streamer, and flew forward. Seal outside the land of God. Elder Shin sickle meditating silently. She seemed to sense something. Her brows frowned. Her face slightly changed. Immediately, he flipped his right hand, and an ancient lamp was held in his palm. The faint candlelight shook the ancient lamp, and then In a blink of an eye, the flame on the ancient lamp's wick shattered suddenly. Seeing this scene, the elder Sickle's face changed drastically, and he stood up suddenly, staring sternly into the land of Fengshan, exclaiming, "Yendan War!" I saw that the elder Sickle had fallen into rage, countless green tendons on his forehead, and his facial features were distorted. "Who killed my son?" The elder god of Falcon snarled, and his aspirations cracked to the extreme. A breath of terrible horror emanated from him. That magic lamp is bound to a trace of the essence of life of Yen Dan. The stronger the breath of Yen Dan's life, the stronger the candlelight on this magic lamp. On the contrary, the weaker the breath of Yen Dan's life, the light on the lamp naturally dims. And just now, he saw with his own eyes the light on that magic lamp went out. Totters die like lamps. Now that the lights are off, naturally, Yenden has fallen, angry. A anger that could not be described in any words nearly burned the elder Sickle. Chi Yenden is dead. Yen Dan, his only son, had high hopes. In the future, Yen Dan, the son of the suzerain who was going to reign, would die in the land of God. A muffled noise came out, but the elder Sickle was angry and could not help spit out blood. His hair was exploded, and he became gray immediately, and his lips became pale and extremely dry. The eyes of the elder sickling Sickle were scarlet, and he stared at the land of Fengshan, trembling with anger. "Who killed my child in the end? Poor Green in this seat and falling Huangquan will kill you, but also kill all your loved ones in this world." Elder Shen sickened with anger. His eyes flashed fiercely, and his complexion was extremely extreme. There was a hint of intuition in his heart. "I killed the Yenden people. Most likely it was the sword unparalleled in their eyes as a prey. Miss Double. Must be Miss Double." The elder Sickle stared at the land of God, and his eyes flashed with struggle. He could not wait to enter the land of God now and kill the sword unparalleled, but when he saw the circle of forbidden apertures, there was a rush of fear. After a short while, Elder Shenxian took a deep breath and sat down cross-legged. "Miss Shuang, you better pray that you are dead in it. Otherwise, if you come out alive, this seat will definitely peel you off and cramp and use all kinds of torture methods to make you regret being born in this world." The evil spirits continued to grow in the eyes of the elder Falcon. In the land of God's seal, after Jian Wushuang passed many arrogances, he suddenly lost his breath and directly transformed the full force into the divine power. Boom! Medium and supreme practice spread instantly and rushed to the sky, causing thousands of thunders to blow, a breath that shared the same origins as these 99 bands permeated the quartet. The horrible power of the bands immediately resembled Ru Yen when she saw her parents. She directly swept away the sword and led its past behind Jian Wushuang. The half-step invincibility of Qi Bingji Supreme, only one line away from the Supreme, the same horrible practice, the same skyrocketing. The two of them, one after the other, broke into the deep place of Fengshan, directly like two meteors. Tianhe, Medium Supreme? This guy broke through again. Extremely felt the breath of the great shore from Jianhua's body, and her pupils shrank slightly. "However, your sword is unparalleled. Why is there no chance for me?" Bingshuan snorted supremely, glanced down at a bag hanging around his waist. "In this bag, there is the blow of the Emperor Taishu. This is also the dare to challenge Jian Wushuang, bluntly killing Jian Wushuang, the killer at the bottom of the box." Boom! As soon as he stepped on his feet, the Excalibur appeared in his hand and immediately shot towards the sword Wushuang. Chapter 45:01. Bing Extreme and sword unparalleled, sprinting forward and backward. Bing Extreme, holds the Excalibur sword, but he is not in a hurry to shoot at the sword. Although he hated Jian Wushuang's bones and wished to sacrifice his flesh, he was not a stupid person and was not impulsively stunned. He knew in his heart that compared to killing Jian Wushuang, now, the most important thing before him was to enter, seal the land of the gods, and see if the team sent by the gods of the year was still alive. If is still alive, he will naturally have a chance. Even if falls, presumably the team's Qianquan ring naturally remains here. That is the invincible supreme relic. He couldn't help but be indifferent. Thinking of this, Bingyu Supreme stepped faster. Supernatural power, Ice Wing, he whispered, and frost condensed on his back, forming a pair of long and bright ice crystal wings. Wow! His wings fluttered, and the speed of the ice mastiff skyrocketed. Suddenly, he was behind Jian Wushuang. Between the light and flint, he surpassed Jian Wushuang and ran forward. Okay. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes at the Bingyu Supreme, who sprinted past him. Will he not know what is the intention of this Bingyu Supreme hug? Dragon blood mystery. Kai? Jian Wushuang sank in a low voice, and the next moment his already extremely fast speed soared again, a level that was directly equal to the ice mastiff who had passed him. The two of them were very fast. You chased me in an instant and disappeared in place and swept deeper. This is the bitter ram who is chasing behind. How come these two guys are so fast? The cricket ram smiled helplessly. He has already let out his breath. Jian Wushuang and Bingyu Supreme should know that he exists, but they just ignored him. Oh, let's go. He shook his head, and the ram's supreme figure flew and followed closely. 51 bans. Prohibition. 85 prohibitions. Prohibition of 97 roads. Instantly, Jian Wushuang and Bingyu Supreme turned into horizontal thunder, straight through dozens of prohibitions, and shot towards the land of the gods. After half a column of incense, a choke-like barrier appeared in front of the two, as if a round bowl buckled down. The light exudes a faint yellow light, leaving the two outside. This is the last ban. Breaking through this prohibition is the real land of God Seal, and it is the place where the Lord of Life Jingu Palace and others are located. Wu Jianwushuang arrived one step ahead, and he could feel that the same breath of life as he originated from the source emanated from behind the 99th prohibition. This familiarity, he has only experienced it in one person, that's Geniki. I felt this sense of familiarity. The hand that Jian Wushuang had stretched out stagnates in midair. Is it master? At this moment, Gu Jing's state of mind that Jian Wushuang had already cultivated has become a little confused. At the beginning, he was not skeptical. Would it be possible that his mysterious master might be the master of the Palace of Life? But he didn't dare to ask, for he was disappointed with the results. Later, at the grand ceremony of the universe, the of the universe mentioned to his master, Xian Yi, although he still hasn't got the exact news. Jian Wushuang always knows one thing, that is, his master should be a figure on the same level as the of the universe. And the Lord of Life Jingong Palace, although equally mysterious and powerful, obviously will not be a level character with the of the universe. If Xian Yi is the master of the Palace of Life Jing, the of the universe would not be so secretive and blunt. Therefore, Jian Wushuang also broke off the idea that Xian Yihui was the master of the Life Palace. But at this moment, Jian Wushuang felt the familiarity coming out of the last barrier, but the idea was shaken. The breath inside him is exactly the same as him. This must not be done. Sword unparalleled. This seat will take a step first. Extremely noticed that Jian Wushuang had a strange face next to him. He dismissed his lips and then stepped into the last prohibition. Alas! With a soft bang, Bingyu Supreme fell into the water, and his body directly passed through the last 99th forbidden and entered the land of the gods. Whether it is right or not, you know it at first sight. After a short while, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, a flash of persistence in his eyes, and no hesitation stepped into this barrier. Alas! A piece of darkness struck, as if trapped in the warm sea water, a warm current flowing on Jian Wushuang's body. This force of restraint is the most horrifying means of thunder for those who face the virtual universe, but those who face the divine universe are transformed into a pair of gentle hands. Alas! Ding! The darkness in front of me gradually receded, and countless stars of light appeared in the eyes of Jian Wushuang. The next moment, as if the world was lost, Jian Wushuang leapt lightly, jumping out of this best restraint. This is... Jian Wushuang saw this for a moment, and saw himself standing on a mountain, a skinny figure, facing his back. Where's Bingyu Supreme? Jian Wushuang frowned, and he did not see the figure of Bingyu Supreme. He was just stunned for a moment, and Jian Wushuang retracted his thoughts and turned to look at the thin back. This back has gray hair and dangles all over the body, like skinny skin with saggy skin attached to the bones, giving people a feeling of dying wood and exhausted oil. The breath of the same origin that Jian Wushuang felt before was transmitted from this back. Senior, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and tried to ask. This back did not speak. A gust of wind blew across the top of the mountain, brushing his somewhat broken Tsing, revealing his lean, skeletal body. Until a long while, he only heard a hoarse, old voice coming out of this skinny back. I ask you, what's the situation at the shrine now? As soon as this word came to an end, Jian Wushuang suddenly understood it. The identity of this thin back is naturally the legendary figure of the Life Shrine, the master of the Life Shrine standing at the highest point of the universe. Hit him, not Xuani. I think of this. Jian Wushuang somehow, some joy, and some loss. With a swinging corner, Jian Wushuang kneeled on one knee, took a deep breath, and said respectfully, Shun Shang, the disciples of Life Jingu Sword are unparalleled. See Master Gongzhu. Master, returning to the palace. Now the Temple of Life is seriously affected by the disciples, and they are very injured. They are recuperating. Jian Wushuang began to talk about the situation of the Life Shrine. He knew now, slowly speaking. The skinny back did not speak, but listened quietly, seemingly unmoved, and did not react. After Jian Wushuang finished speaking, she was thin and silent for a long time, and then slowly said, Jian Wushuang, don't call me Lord of the Palace. You should call me Brother. Chapter 45:02. Brother? Jian Wushuang paused. A conjecture that made him feel incredible and shocked gradually came out of his mind. From beginning to end, he has received many powerful refuges and inheritances from his predecessors in his life, but the true worship of the teacher can make Jian Wushuang call a master. And there is only one person, that is Xuani. And the Lord of Life Jingu Palace said. So then there is only one possibility, that is, he is also a disciple of Xuani. Yes. The thin figure nodded, and then turned slowly. An old face appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. His hair was gray, his eyes were cloudy, the skin on his cheeks was sunken, and his face was crumpled against his face. The whole man was full of the hero's late blight. Jian Wushuang, when you step into this land of God, I sense the breath of you. This is the breath that transcends the perfect level of life. Only one person can create this breath, and that is us, Master. The main body of the Life Shrine Palace said. His tone was flat, without any ups and downs. Jian Shuang's expression was complicated, and he did not speak. It seems that the Lord of the Palace of Life and the Palace of God did not want to hear Jian Wushuang's answer, but continued to say indifferently, Daoyin of this seat, this life has many identities, such as the Lord of Life Jingong Palace, such as the First Supreme, but what makes this seat the most cannot be left only one identity, that is, his disciples. Jian Wuxuang heard a word. After a long while, Jian Wuxuang thought about it and asked softly, Brother Daoyin, can you tell me something about Master? This is the most urgent and most wanted news for Jian Wuxuang. Master, the head of the Palace of the Life Shrine, Tao Yen Supreme heard the words and looked up, as if looking through the 99 roads, looking to an extremely distant place. He said after a long silence, Our master is a character who can't use common sense. Do NT say that you do NT know his condition. Even if this practitioner is to this point standing at the pinnacle of the universe, he still cannot see through the master. I do NT know much about Master S news, but I can tell you everything. First of all, this seat was born at the beginning of the universe. When chaos just opened, I was also the master I knew at that time. I was nothing but a green lotus who didn't understand in the chaos. It was during the dawn of chaos that the master woke me up and gave me wisdom roots so that we could wake up from the chaos and practice all the way. When I came to the back, it was the master who transformed his body for me and gave me a special life beyond the perfect level. I just stepped into this state step by step and reached the top of the universe. Speaking carefully, the Life Shrine of the Year was also created by the Master, and the Life Shrine can be born thanks to the Master. Until the 100,000 Chaos era, people with the Void Universe entered the Divine Universe through the Void Gap, and then a catastrophe occurred, and the Master disappeared as if the world had evaporated. In these years, this block has not stopped the search for Master from the Divine Universe to the Void Universe. Although this seat did not find a Master, this seat is not without gain. 10,000s of epochs of chaos. When this block first stepped into the virtual universe, he encountered a dying 6-mark vanity, and on his body, this block felt the breath of a master. Later, I learned from him that this person is also a disciple of Master. It's just that this seat has more time to ask in the future. This person will die and disappear, and this seat will be chased by the most powerful person in this universe and can only retreat. Before this person was dying, it is best to tell me a word of this seat so that I don't have to look for traces of Master. He said, We are created by Master, and we must be due to Master in the future. And dying is just delayed by Master. Life Jingu Palace, Lord said, lightly. Qi Jian Wuxuang fell into silence. This is not the first time he has heard that Master is a chess player, and they are a chess piece. As early as at the Cosmos Grand Event, the of the Universe said something similar to him. Wuxuani in the next big game. This game uses the universe as the chess surface and all beings as the chess pieces. His sword unparalleled, or other disciples of Xian Yi, are just a ring in the chess game, a chess piece. Sword unparalleled. Do you know, I see you, especially like seeing a person. Shrine Palace main Tao Yen Supreme said, Am I? Like who? Wu Jian asked with a frown. I used to be, she said, shaking her head. Qi Jian Wuxuang couldn't help but sigh. Hey, he is not like the former Tao Yen Supreme, and Xian Yi was given the chance to make a good fortune. Then he set foot on a path to find Master. Brother Dao, Yen, let me take you out of here first. Converged his thoughts, Jian Wuxuang said. He turned over with his right hand, and Zhen Tianbei appeared in his hand. Although the Lord of the Life Shrine has disappeared tens of thousands of chaos periods, his legend still exists in the universe. I was rumored that at the time of the Holocaust, the of the universe had not yet risen. It was the Supreme Master of the Palace of Life, who led the universe and resisted the erosion of the virtual universe. It was precisely because of his existence that he was dragged into the rise of the universe, and then he turned the tide and drove the people out of the virtual universe. I can say that Supreme is the man in the divine universe, second only to the of the universe. Now, the second catastrophe is imminent. If Dao Yen could return at this time, it would be an epic strengthening of the magical universe. In addition, Dao Yen Supreme is also his elder brother, and the master of the Palace of Life. His sword is unparalleled. How can he bear to let this old man who has already disappeared, and the old man with a candle remaining in his life, continue to be alone in this land of God? This seat cannot go out. However, Tao Yen Supreme shook his head and said, "Sword unparalleled. These 99 bands are all supported by this seat. Although it resists the power of the virtual universe and prevents it from entering, it also breaks the way out of this seat. Once this seat leaves here, these 99 prohibitions will collapse in an instant. And once these 99 prohibitions collapse, the guy who has been staring at this seat in the universe will immediately release and place this seat in deadly. At that time, not only will this seat fall, you will also die because of this seat. We will not be able to get out of here." That guy, Jian Wuxuang, heard a word. "Yes." Dao Yen nodded his head. His lips aroused a touch of indifference, and looked up at Woody Void. That guy fought with this seat in the past. This seat can only seal himself in these 3 inches, and that guy is equally, he was seriously injured and has been recuperating. Calculate time. That guy's injury has recovered at this moment. This seat can feel that for nearly 1,000 times of chaos, there has been a pair of eyes looking at this seat. I'm afraid that is the guy. If this seat is to go out, I'm afraid we have to wait until one day you can truly defeat the virtual universe and come in. Chapter 45:03. Is this so? Wu Jian's brows frowned. Some regrets. He is not a reckless person, since Dao Yen Supreme said so. It is naturally in this virtual universe that at least one level of power exists with Dao Yen staring at the land of God. If you forcefully pull the palace master out, not only will the palace master be harmed, but you will not be able to go out alive. Well, sword is unparalleled. You don't have to force it. You come here, I have something to give you. Pu Dao Yen Supreme smiled slightly at the corner of his mouth and waved his hand toward the sword. Unparalleled. Yes. Wu Jian Wuxuang nodded, and then walked towards Dao Yen Supreme. Come, Jian Wuxuang. Come sit down in front of me. This seat will give you a good fortune. After Jian Wuxuang sat down cross-legged in front of Dao Yen Supreme, Dao Yen Supreme extended his finger and gently clicked on Jian Wuxuang's brows. Boom! Suddenly, a huge amount of knowledge was poured into Jian Wuxuang's mind along Dao Yen's supreme fingertips. The huge amount of knowledge almost explodes the sword unparalleled mind. The vision of Wu Jian's eyes changed suddenly. Boom dash! Instantly, Jian Wuxuang seemed to travel through the floods of the heavens and the earth, endless time and space, and returned to the beginning of the universe. I saw a chaos between the heavens and the earth. A hazy haze, I don't know how long after that. Suddenly the clear air rose, the turbid gas subsided, and the chaos began to separate. From there was a sky and the earth. Everything began to multiply and be born, and the original face of the universe began. In the universe, there are gradually signs of life. A common green lotus, located in the chaos, took the first breath of Hongmeng and began to evolve from then on. Wu Jian Wuxuang knows that this green lotus is naturally Tao Yen Supreme. As time passed, Jian Wuxuang was immersed in the evolution of this green lotus. Martyrdom, Yen rises from the end of the micro, and then dominates the universe. All the avenues of understanding and magic skills are engraved in Jian Wuxuang's mind. The pictures in Wu Jian's eyes did not end until Dao Yen Supreme reached the top of the universe. After the cricket was over, Jian Wushuang said nothing, closed his eyes immediately, and began to digest the mood and feelings in it. This is Dao Yen Supreme's understanding of Tiandi Avenue. At this moment, I gave Jian Wushuang everything. This fortune, it was scary. And Jian Wushuang also knows that at this moment is not the time to say the words of gratitude. What he has to do now is to do his best to absorb this insight carefully. He and Dao Yen Supreme are both super perfect lives. It can be said that by absorbing this Dao Yen Supreme's understanding of the heavens and the avenue and the realization of the major realms, Jian Wushuang's future will be smooth. As long as he follows going the route, future achievements can reach the point where Dao Yen is supreme. After a few hours, Wu Jianshou slowly opened his eyes and exhaled a long breath. His consciousness on heaven and earth avenue has been digested by him. During the pause time, Jian Wushuang had many things he didn't understand on the road, and combined with Tao Yen Supreme's perception of Tiandi Avenue, he couldn't help but open up just like a gigantic initiation. Stones from other hills can learn. Wu Jianwushuang is not ready to follow the Taoist Supreme Enlightenment and follow the same path as the Taoist Supreme. However, Dao Yen's supreme enlightenment from heaven can directly increase his knowledge of the enlightenment on the avenue, broaden his horizons, and make up for shortcomings. Thank you, brother. Wu Jianshou took a deep breath and bowed his head to worship. Oh, no need, Yugong. You are my disciple. You are my master. This one should take care of you for 1 or 2. If you are really interested, you should practice well. If any day, you can lead the shrine disciple. It is our greatest consolation to break into this virtual universe and rescue this seat. Su Daoyan shook his head with a smile and raised his hand, and a soft power blocked the forehead of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang looked at Dao Yen with a somber expression, and then gave a long, stern, earnestly, and said in a deep voice, "Brother Dao Yen, rest assured, my Jian Wushuang swears here. In this life, as long as my sword Wuzhuo's life does not return to heaven, he do everything in your power to lead a disciple of the palace to break the virtual universe and rescue you, brother. It is good." Shi Daoyan smiled a little. Her face was kind and soft. Immediately, he doubled his right hand again, and a black iron token appeared in his hand. The sword is unparalleled, and now the Dragon Palace of Life has no heads. This seat is now ordered to seal you as the second-generation Palace Lord of Life Palace. This token card represents the identity of the sovereign. If you hold this token, you will be the second generation of my life shrine. After saying this, Dao Yen Supreme pushed with his right hand and handed this black iron token to Jian Wushuang. Wu Jianwusu took a deep look at Dao Yen Supreme and immediately solemnly collected the token. Seeing this, Dao Yen nodded with satisfaction and said, "Jian Wushuang, now that you are the suzerain, you should act as suzerain. You must not be desolate and innocent. You think. Disciple, understand. The sword is unparalleled, brother Dao Yen, and also the Taoist is now lurking in the refining deities, so that if the disciples see you, help him to give you a sentence. He is fine, no need to worry." This kid has a good life. I didn't expect the weakest of us at the time, but fled to birth. Dao Yen was supreme for a moment, then smiled broadly at the corner of his mouth, and shook his head. It's worth mentioning, the kid who moved the mountain is still alive, but it's a piece of my mind. Afterwards, the two confessed a few more words, and there was a tinge of tiredness in Dao Yan's supremely cloudy eyes. Sword unparalleled. Then, finally, Dao Yan took a deep look at Jian Wushuang and whispered softly, "Take care of this shrine, for life am in trouble." Howl! The words of the crickets fell, and Dao Yen waved with his right hand as if the picture collapsed, and the lightning broke instantly. Boom! As a blast exploded, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but close his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, the mountaintop and Daoyan Supreme disappeared. Instead, it was a desolate land. A piece of wall remains on this piece of land. Where is there any Daoyan Supreme? Okay? Jian Wushuang saw this for a moment. Was it just a remnant of Dao Yan's supreme conversation with himself just now? The true Tao Yen Supreme. Has the divine body broken? Just when Jian Wushuang's mind was full of thoughts. Ha 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 ha. The sky does not live up to me. Even let me get the full heritage of the Daqing Emperor. Daqing God Emperor is a loud laugh came, and Jian Wushuang heard the sound, and saw that the ice skimmer, who was also sitting cross-legged, not far from him, opened his eyes. And when Jian Wushuang looked at him, Binyu Supreme also looked at Jian Wushuang. Next moment, he made a low smirk. Sword warriors, it's time we settled. Latest URL, Chapter 4504. At the heart of the land of gods. The sky was gray, and a piece of the earth was ruined, full of bleak scenes. Bing Extreme holds the Excalibur in his hand and twists his neck, his eyes flashing fiercely. Qi Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and held the hilt of the Tai Luo Excalibur with his right hand. On both of them, at the same time, they exude horrible momentum and amazing swordsmanship, heading for Shaohan. The sword intention of the two people, one is Sun, full of overbearing meaning, one is sharp as if it can tear the sky into two. Immediately afterwards, these two horrible swords rose up, forming a terrible sword pressure, like a dragon and a tiger fighting, constantly colliding in the air, sending out a blast, and tumbling the land around them. This battle, whether it is too long for Jian Wushuang or Binyu Supreme, the enmity between the two can be traced back to the ancient road to the sky over 100,000 years ago. Sword unparalleled. Only one of you and me can fight alive today. Extreme eyes flashed. His face was full of bloodthirsty. Originally, when he was in the divine universe, he had realized a chance to break through the invincible Supreme. The result was that the battle with Jian Wushuang at the gate of the Taishu Shrine almost defeated him completely and missed the opportunity to break through the invincible Supreme. Invisible, Jian Wushuang has become the demon-like existence of Binyu Supreme Nightmare. Sun Bingshu believes that as long as he kills the sword without double-clicking, the invincible indomitable heart will be fulfilled again. But he can try to break through the invincible Supreme again. Sword unparalleled. Today I will use your blood to forge the invincible avenue of my icy magpie. Huh. After a smirk, a wing formed of ice crystals appeared on the back of Binyu Supreme. His right foot struck heavily, and the whole man burst into a flash, turning into a streamer and killing Sword Wushuang. This sword is coming to an extreme. Bing Extreme is fast, but Jian Wushuang is faster. Sword comes. Howl. Jian Wushuang frowned, holding the 5 knuckles of Tai Luo's Excalibur's hilt clearly fingers, and pulled out instantly. Like a shocking dragon, Bai Hong was pulled out of the scabbard by Jian Wushuang. There was a flash of electricity in Jian Wu's eyes. Ding! A crisp, muffled sound sounded, and I saw that Binji's Supreme Excalibur and the Terra Excalibur in the sword without hands have run into each other. The sacred sword is one of the 7 ancestors of the magical universe. Although this sacred sword is powerful, it is still worse than the sacred sword. I saw that after the two played against each other, the sword of God suddenly swung backwards, breaking a slight gap. Jian Wushuo held the sword with one hand, except for the black robe's clothing corner being slightly blown by the strong wind. The whole person remained motionless and did not move at all. The fight is instant, and the relationship between victory and defeat is known. As early as when Sun was in the virtual domain, Jian Wushuang was able to suppress Binyu Supreme with the elementary Supreme. Now Jian Wushuang breaks through the middle to Supreme. Alas! Bingyu Supreme pressed down the boiling blood in his chest, his eyes narrowed slightly, admiring. Jian Wushuang, your talents and strength, it is simply the creation of heaven and earth, the darling of the avenue. Every so often, if you don't see it, your battle will soar. Although Bing Bingshuan said the words of admiration, the ice in his eyes did not decrease by half. Jian Wushuang, if you are a disciple of my Tu Shrine, my Bingyu Supreme will definitely take you as the leader of the horse, and even the position of the master of the temple can be confided to you, but unfortunately, you and me have endless vengeance. Noise. Without waiting for him to finish, the sword's expressionless face was interrupted by both sides without expression. Bin Gao, Xiuyao, you can take out your strongest whole card directly. Otherwise you will die today, without doubt. Definitely death, isn't it? Upon hearing the words, Bing Bingshuan laughed loudly, holding the hilt of the sword of the Excalibur with both hands, stabbing the ground. Supernatural powers, mirror flowers. Alas! I saw a circle of water under the sword's point, with the ice snorkeler stabbing towards the water surface. Countless water flowers burst out. Instantaneously, these water sprays condense and turn into countless ice owls. Each of these incarnations has a full blow from Bingyu Supreme, which can be described as extremely difficult. At the beginning, it was too troublesome for Jian Wushuang. Swords that can only be forced to use the 4 seasons swordsmanship, one by one. But now, nature is different. Kill. Bingyu Supreme drank a low drink, and for a while, thousands of Bingyu Supreme incarnations, all raised swords, swords matchless. Boom. The next moment, these tens of thousands of incarnations, daring to kill the sword, unparalleled. Bingao, is it still the same? You are too disappointed. Wu Jianshou looked at the overwhelming number of Ice Cream Supreme swords incarnations covering the sky and shook his head expressionlessly. Soon he moved. Cut. Wu Jian stepped forward without a two-way forward, and the tailored Excalibur in his hand swept forward fiercely. Suddenly, a white sword light that was thousands of feet wide and nearly 10,000 feet wide swept out instantly. The breadth is thousands of feet wide and nearly 10,000 feet long. What is this concept? This sword, just like a tianhe, crashed out of the same volume, directly split out a vast ocean. This is a sea of swords. This sea of swords directly covered the entire land of Fengshan, hitting tens of thousands of Moraine Supreme avatars fiercely. The majestic sword sea directly submerged thousands of Moraine Supreme incarnations. The original number is still a staggering number, the Moraine Supreme sword incarnation covering the sky. Under this sword sea, just like ants and sky. What is the use of ants? When the sky falls, everything will be destroyed. Card. In an instant, the waves of endless sword seas slap away. In the sword seas, these incarnations are broken up into ice slags, and then washed by the sword seas, they are directly annihilated into fly ash. The supreme incarnation of began to collapse in a large area at an amazing speed. Rip. Then, at this moment, the void in the land of the gods was torn, but it was the Ram Supreme that finally arrived. He hadn't had time to stand on his feet, and the scene in front of him was shocked, and he quickly waved his divine power to form a shield of light, blocking the predatory sword light. The two are fighting now. The cricket ram supremely looked expressionless. One sword cut out the sword Wu sword of Jianhai, and his eyelids jumped suddenly. This is the first time he has seen Jian Wushuang really make a shot. The visual impact of this scene has directly caused a stormy sea in his heart. Is the sword and sword Wushuang so strong? Even the half-strength, invincible ice mastiff is not his opponent. He took a cool breath, turned his right hand over again, took out a wooden staff again, and poked to the ground, blocking the sword's Yue. Chapter 45:05. The ram supremely hid in the corner of the land of the gods and watched the battle without blinking. At the beginning, he had originally planned to persuade him, but after seeing the momentum of the two, he suddenly stopped participating in his persuasion. Speaking of him, he is also a top-level supreme placed in the universe, and that is also a great figure. But when he saw the battle between Jian Wushuang and Bingyu Supreme, he felt that there was no room for him to stand. These two are terrible. The cricket ram smiled and shook his head. Huh. Within the sword sea, composed of sword light is like a rolling river, and it is like the raging waves of the angry sea. If it is not in this land of God, there are 99 prohibitions to isolate everything. I'm afraid that the entire universe sky will be blown out of the cave by the sword of Wushuang. Under the boiling sword sea, in just a few breaths, the Ice Lord's Kendo incarnations all collapsed. He only had the real Bingyu Supreme, and he was in the sword sea, constantly slashing against waves of sword-light waves that beat him. Supernatural power. I am the Emperor. Boom. Suddenly, Bingyu Supreme has already fallen into a sluggish atmosphere, and the whole person has swelled at a very fast speed. The breath of horror spreads around him, shaking the world. Oh! Wu Jian's brow lifted, his expressionless face a little bit of warfare this time. Bingao, this is what it looks like. Come, show your strength. Don't let me down. Zhang Jianhui's eyes flickered with war fighting, and the gods also unfolded. Yizhang, Shizhang, Baizhang, Qianzhang, Wanzhang, Shiwanzhang. Suddenly, both Jian Wushuang and Bingyu Supreme were soaring gods. Rising up, the two men seemed to be transformed into an ancient giant, standing on top of each other, looking at the mountains, but at the knees. The two men seemed to raise their hands, they could hold the sun and the moon, and when they stepped on their feet, they could use the Milky Way as a foot bump. The eyes of the two of them looked like a burning sun. At the time of 150,000 feet, Bingyu Supreme stopped expanding. The breath of his whole body changed, and a crown made of glazed ice appeared on his head. His skin was covered with a thick layer of ice crystal armor, and only a pair of cold silver pupils were exposed. In his hands, divine sword disappeared, and turned into an ice crystal great sword. It's not over yet. On his back, the wings of ice crystals have condensed again, but they are widened countless times, as if with a light click they can destroy the world. But Jian Wushuang is still growing. 200,000 feet, 21,000 feet. It was not until the 25,000 feet the sword's inflated and enlarged body that Kankan stopped. Originally had been as tall as the icy magpies of Zhoushan Mountain. Before the sword was double-sided, it suddenly became shorter. Huh! No words. The sword is double. He stepped out and stepped a mountain directly into the flat ground. His right fist was like pulling a bow to the full moon, and smashed severely towards the ice mastiff. Shizongsun's supreme repairs all broke out, condensing on his fist and cooperating with his immortal domineering body that dominated the ancient world. It was like holding a sun on his fist, exuding fierce golden light. Rumble. This fist is extremely strong, and the overbearing power and sword energy on it have not yet blasted on the body of Bingyu Supreme, and they have emptied the void into a pit, setting off a shocking wave. Come, Jian Wushuang, today you die or I die. There was a sense of madness on the face of Bing Extreme, and it was absolutely to the extreme, showing a spirit of indomitable. He lifted a giant sword like a glacier mountain and severely chopped down at the sword, unparalleled. Huh! Shocking explosion. Bingyu Extreme's body is violently violent. The overbearing power and horrible sword strength on Jian Wushuang's fist directly follows the glacier greatsword, like thousands of waves, and waves hit the Bingyu Extreme's body. Suddenly, countless ice crystals splashed, and the Moraine Supreme stepped back in 3 steps. Each step was as if an earthquake had been triggered. With his feet as the center, the earth began to crack like a spider's web. Bottomless gully long marks. The sword and Wushuang also groaned. His fist overflowed with pale golden blood, and his bones almost shattered. But even so, Jian Wushuang's face was sneered. At that time, in the Taishu star field, the sword did not have the double-sided approach to Bingyu Supreme, and it was almost impossible to resist. The extremely poor ability could not hurt Bingyu Supreme. In the end, it was the last move of Tai Luo Jian that defeated Bingyu Supreme. But now, with his own power, he is enough to compete with Bingyu Supreme. Come again. Wu Jianshou laughed loudly. His eyes flashed with war. I saw him step out and began to run away, and once again raised his fist to kill the Ice Cream Supreme. Okay, Jian Wushuang, I have to see how far you have grown. Su Binji's extreme face sank, and he also lifted the glacier sword, jumping up and splitting towards the sword, unparalleled. Good job. Talented, amazing life. Qi Jian Wushuang laughed and cast his life shock directly. A wave of coercion from the life level spread out instantly, letting the Bingyu Supreme move. This is the time when Jian Wushuang bullied himself into the body, his hands condensed into fists as if holding the sun and the moon in the palm of his hand, releasing endless brilliance, and it was a wild bombing towards the supreme chest of Bingyu. On sword of Wu Shuang's unparalleled fist, the sharp sword exploded, and it exploded on Binji's supreme chest. For the current sword Wu Shuang, in fact, it is not difficult to cut and kill Bingyu Supreme. He only needs to cast the 5th form of Tai Luo sword of Tai Luo, and Jian Wushuang has confidence. This time, he can directly kill Bingyu Supreme. I did NT even have to worry about it. He directly released the corpse of Tai Luo, who is now hiding in the town's monument. WWW novel. The two together. Even if they slowly grind as they want, they can grind the ice to death. But Jian Wushuang did not choose to do so. He has to rely on his original and most original strength to thoroughly crush the ice cricket in all aspects. He wants to convince Bingyu to die. Wu Jian's unparalleled double fists hit faster and faster, like the same heavy artillery, and slammed into the ice chest's supreme chest like a storm. Countless ice crystal splashes. The thick layer of ice crystal armor on Sun Binji's body was crushed directly by Jian Wushuang's fist. In the dense bombardment of Jian Wushuang's fists, the supreme body of Bingyu began to tremble violently, and the whole person was constantly shaking like a sieve. His face quickly changed from blue to white, with blood flowing from his ears to his nose, and his breath became weak, broken. With Jian Wushuang's loud shout, he gathered a punch of Jian Wushuang's whole body power and sword energy and banged straight in the center of Bingyu Supreme's chest. Suddenly, Bingyu Supreme was hit by a raging locomotive, and the whole person flew out like a rag sack. He crossed a parabola in the air and smashed heavily on the ground, setting off a cloud of smoke and dust. Qi Jian Wushuang retracted his fist and gasped slightly. The whole world, only him like a mountain, standing alone. Chapter 45:06. Too fierce. This sword is unparalleled. It's not fierce human. In the distance, the ram stunned and watched the scene where Jian Wushuang punched the ice cricket with his fist, and his whole body was shaking. There was no magical power between the two in the battle just now, only the original collision of fist to flesh, divine power, and physical power. This battle is extremely brutal, and at the same time, the visual impact caused is also great. Between the two, each sword and punch can blast the sun and settle the galaxy. Pairs bang together. All directly trigger the starry sky storm. Chant. A cloud of mushrooms, thousands of miles wide, erupted, and the ice mastiff's body was as high as 150,000 feet. After it fell to the ground, it immediately triggered a magnitude 10 earthquake, shaking violently. Cough, cough. A violent cough sounded in the dust of the sky. Soon after, she saw the smoke and dust, and Bingyu Supreme stood up from the ground. His body has returned to its original shape, with silver hair and waist, pieces of clothes all over his body, and blood constantly flowing between his ears, nose, and eyes. Jian Wushuang, your growth is amazing. Bing Extreme shook his head. Qi Jian Wushuang also began to shrink quickly, recovering the cost. I saw Jian Wushuang's black hair scattered. Her eyes bright. Her eyes seemed to be connected with two stars, bright and energetic. Bingao, say goodbye to this world. Qi Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent, and his right hand looked at his side and took a breath. The Tai Luo divine sword, which was inserted diagonally in the distance, flew up and shot into Jian Wushuang's hand, and was pinched by Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, do you think you won? Seeing this scene, Bing Bingsun's face was full of ice crystals and blood, but there was no fear at all, but he laughed out loud. Sword unparalleled. Do you think this place dared to come to you this time? Really do not have a whole card? Wu Jianwushuang heard his words and frowned slightly. Next moment, the expression on Supreme face was suddenly replaced by, he opened his mouth and yelled, "Sword unparalleled, let's die." Boom. I saw his right hand poking out like electricity, grabbed the bag around his waist and crushed it, with a horrible breath like a prison spreading with this bag as the center. This breath is far above the Bingyu Supreme. This breath appears together, and the world is discolored. The earth is like a drop of countless bombs. It is flattened. Even the 99 prohibitions around him began to tremble slightly. Invincible Supreme. This is the breath of Invincible Supreme. In the distance, the Ram's supreme complexion changed greatly under this breath. He even had a feeling of being unable to bear to kneel and worship, and only one person could make him feel that way. That is the Invincible Supreme. Is this the breath of the Emperor Taishu? Wu Jian's pupils shrank a little, and immediately felt both funny and angry. Emperor Taishu, invincible and supreme, one of the main forces of the divine universe resisting the demon universe, even disregarded the overall situation. Regardless of his sword, Wushuang went deep into the demon universe for the divine universe. Life. I really are a too virtual god. Sword unparalleled. This seat said, "This time you it." Seeing the supreme appearance, Bing Bing laughed suddenly. His hatred of Jian Wushuang. From that day, Jian Wushuang defeated him in front of the starry realm, in front of the eyes. He has been impressed, endless. He has been proud all his life. Now, seeing the adversary who is about to be able to reach the edge, how can he not be happy? How can he not be hearty? I bang, bang, bang. The breath of Xian has continued to rise. Over the sky, rolling clouds were formed and numerous bowl-thick electric snake thunders shuttled among them, crackling in the void. Immediately, he saw a majestic middle-aged man wearing a black gold crown and wearing a royal robe, born in the Thunder Sea. For this person, he is a virtual shadow of Emperor Taishu. In the phantom of Emperor Taishu, the white thunder continued to flicker, and his eyes were indifferent. Bingao, stop. Seeing this scene, the Ram Supreme couldn't bear it anymore and swept out of the corner. Bingao, Jian Wushuang is the world's proudest man in our universe. The future has amazing potential. Maybe in the future, he will become the strongest person after the of the universe. The universe? Bingao, think about it. Now that you have killed the sword unparalleled, what's your benefit? Rather than wait for the end of this catastrophe, the two of you will compete with each other's strengths. The cricket Ram snarled loudly as he approached quickly. Go away. However, at the moment, Bingyu Supreme, where can I hear the second sentence? I saw him throw a big sleeve, and suddenly the Excalibur was ejected by him, slamming into the Ram Supreme, and hit the Ram Supreme and flew back. Ram, this seat warns you that this is a matter between this seat and Jian Wushuang. No one can interfere in today. If you dare to say a little more, believe it or not, this block killed you together. Bing Extreme looked coldly at the Ram Supreme and issued a humming cry. Suddenly, the Ram supremely chilled. At high altitude, the thunder of the sky was imprisoned, and a sea of thunder has formed. The shadow of Emperor Taixis God Emperor became more and more solid, slowly raised a finger, and pressed toward Sword Wushuang. This finger is a thunder river. Seeing the supreme tadpole Ram, he could not help closing his eyes and could not bear to look. This virtual shadow has the power of the Taishu Emperor. Although there is only one blow, it is an invincible and supreme blow. The difference between the invincible supreme and the ordinary supreme is simply a heaven and a ground. Throughout the ages, there is only one person who can fight with the supreme and the invincible supreme, and that is the supreme supreme. But Taro Supreme at that time was already the top supreme practice. What about Jian Wushuang? Chiu District is the most supreme in terms of cultivation, not even him. Rumble. The void continued to explode, and the swordless pair of black hair flew up. Even before the finger fell, his body was already overwhelmed by the terror. This is simply Tianwei, far beyond human ability. For the first time in Jian Shuang's eyes, there was a solemn meaning. Do and Ti shake this finger. Even if he holds the Taro Excalibur in his hand, he can't resist this attack. Taro Supreme. Qi Jian Wushuang called back slightly. Suddenly, the void behind him cracked, and a stiff figure wearing a black robe stepped out of the void in one step. Boom! A supreme breath, like a blazing flame, soared from the corpse of Taro. Supreme? Jian Wushuang and helper. Who is this person? Suddenly, the Bingyu Supreme and the Ram Supreme were both shocked and raised their eyes toward the corpse of Tai Luo. Chapter 45:07. This is when everyone's eyes fell on the face of Tai Luo's corpse. They were all shocked. Who is this stranger who is covered in a black robe and only reveals a pair of eyes? Supreme Bingyan frowned. For some reason, he saw a slight uneasiness in his heart when he saw the strange Supreme that suddenly appeared. He was especially cold, stiff like a dead body, which made him feel uneasy. However, when he released his divine power, he found that this corpse of Taro was only the first Supreme Master, and then he shook his head and stopped thinking about it. A mere junior Supreme, there is no spray. Bing Extreme sneered, looking at the finger that was about to fall on Jian Wushuang. His eyes were even more pleased. Boom! Suddenly, kill! Qi Jian Wushuang looked up suddenly, looking at this finger. All magical powers were released. Talent is amazing. Life is shocking. Talented supernatural powers. Primitive universe. Dragon blood mystery. Burning divine power. One after another, the strength, blessing on Jian Wushuang's body. Jian Wushuang's breath of immortality soared again. The corpse of Tai Luo, who was behind him, even stepped on his feet, soared into the sky, turned into a sword, and smashed towards that finger. Like an egg hitting a stone, Tai Luo's corpse slammed into the finger of Tai Su Shin Emperor with a determined attitude. Click suddenly, the full power of Tai Luo's corpse exploded, and it exploded in the position of the fingertips of Tai Su God Emperor, but it was useless. Everything was useless. If it was the Taro Supreme in the heyday, holding the Taro Excalibur would be enough to kill the Emperor Taishu, but the current Taro Supreme is just an unconscious corpse. How can it be the invincible Supreme Taishu Emperor's opponent? In a short time, I saw the finger of the Emperor Taishu dimmed slightly, and the body of the Tailuo burst away instantly, and his whole body was almost fragmented. Jian Wushuang saw this. His eyes could not help flashing the color of pity. If it was not helpless, he wouldn't let Tai Luo Supreme's body be in danger. Fortunately, although the corpse of Tai Luo is currently only an elementary supreme practice, the body is actually a top-level supreme. This finger, although the body of Tai Luo's corpse almost burst, but after all, it cannot be completely destroyed. Taro Sword Code, 5th Style, Taro. Qi Jian Wushuang took a deep breath. His eyes were frozen, and his voice slowly came out. As soon as this word fell, the starry sky of the whole land of the gods made a loud noise at the same time. Wow! The overwhelming endless lei hai was torn directly, centered on the sword Wushuang. Each grain of sand was suspended in the sky, transformed into a forest of swords, spreading thousands of feet. This is nothing. Behind the sword Wushuang, there is a huge FA phase that stands out from the sky. This Dharma looks like a blue shirt, with a handsome face, a long sword in his back, a hip flask in his hand, a dim and drunk eye, and a smile to ask who the world is. Unpredictable and unrestrained. This is the true Taro Supreme. This is the one that with a sword in hand, dare to laugh at the man with no husband, the first sword honor of all ages. This is the sword. Su Bingyu looked at it, as if the gate of heaven was wide open, and stepped out of the imperial palace, as if his sword was unparalleled, and his heart seemed to be held tight by a pair of big hands. The last time he was defeated by this sword. Come on, let this sword settle down. Yen Jianhui's eyes showed the fearlessness of breaking the cauldron, holding the Taro Excalibur in both hands, and slashing down. Broken. Suddenly, the Tai Luo Fa phase behind Jian Wushuang. As the sword Wushuang made a chopping stance, Tai Luo Jianzuan and Jian Wushuang merged into one at this moment. Roar! As if there was a giant beast roaring and roaring, the fiery sword light was like a river of heavens rolled up across the sky, through the sun and the moon. The dazzling sword light closed the eyes subconsciously. For a moment, this sword and Taishu Emperor's finger crashed into each other. A piece of space, like glass, began to be covered with cobwebs and then shattered. A gigantic, mighty sword that Jian Wushuang has never experienced, along with this sword, passed to Jian Wushuang. Suddenly, Jian Wu's body shape receded, and there were 1,387,800,000 pores in his body, all of which began to spill blood. After a while, between heaven and earth gradually calm, the bright brilliance gradually dissipated, the vision gradually began to recover, and the roar in the ears slowly disappeared. Wolverine's Bingyu Supreme and Ram's Supreme raised their heads and looked at the sword Wushuang. Tick, tick. This is the sound of the blood of God dripping on the ground. I saw that in the smoke of the sky, the figure of Emperor Taishu had disappeared. Only one person stood proudly. That's Jian Wushuang. His eyebrows were cold, his black robe was shattered, and a trace of red blood flowed down his wrist on the blade of the Taro Excalibur, and then on the Taro Excalibur, dripping to the ground. Not dead. Suddenly, Bingyu Extreme's face turned wild, and he couldn't believe 3 steps backwards, sitting on the ground with one buttock. The blow from Emperor Taixis Emperor failed to kill Jian Wushuang, the Ram Supreme. After a shock, the expression on his face was replaced by complexity. Medium Extreme. Slam the invincible Extreme without a hit. What kind of strength is this ancient and ancient? In the world, there are 3 million arrogants in the world. Only swords are unparalleled and can be called arrogant. No, impossible. Why is this so? At this moment, all the self-confidence and self-esteem of Bingyu Supreme are all fragmented. He looked at Jian Wushuang climbing up from the ground, panicking, shaking his head and saying something unconsciously while trying to flee. Bingao, everything is over. Pedaling in the void, like the sword unparalleled by the sons of heaven and earth, slowly opened his mouth. The simple sound was calm, without any waves. He reached out and grabbed. Thousands of air conditioners locked the Bingyu Supreme, and the Bingyu Supreme flew upside down and fell into the hands of Jian Wushuang. He was held in his hands by Jian Wushuang, Bingo's supreme thoughts, as if he had awakened from the chaos. He looked at Jian Wushuang. His eyes were lost. I lost. At this moment, he was not afraid, no anger, and some were just confused. I felt as if I was missing something, as if I knew that the overall situation had been set. Bingyu Supreme lowered his head and sighed in silence. Huh! The point of the sword of Tai Tai Excalibur pierced from his back, penetrating him throughout. The sword was double-sided and expressionless. When it turned over with its right hand, the sword of Tai Luo Divine Sword erupted, and it directly smashed the Ice God Supreme. Alas! Extreme vitality began to disappear, and the whole person fell straight from the void and hit the ground. I was like a painting on a sand painting, blown by the wind, and Bingia's supreme body was scattered from my feet to my head. This time, Bingyu Supreme fell completely. Chapter 4508. Bingyu Supreme is dead. Resentment with Jian Wushuang. Entangled with more than 100,000 years of the Ice Mastiff Supreme, was killed by Jian Wushuang Yijian in the land of Fengshan. In the world, there was a sound of wind. Jian Wushuang held the Tai Luo Excalibur in his right hand, with black hair flying all over his head, slowly raised his head, and looked towards the void. His pale golden eyes were calm. When stepping into the land of the from Bingyu Supreme, when he was going to die with Jian Wushuang knew that only one person could stand in the end. That is his sword unparalleled. This is not arrogance, but his confidence. Far away, the ram stared at the scene stunned, his mouth opened, and his whole body trembling. Bingyu died, and the one who had swayed the universe and ordered the world's heroes, the supreme master of Bingyu, who is the new master of Taishu Temple, fell into the hands of Jian Wushuang and became the soul of Jian Wushuang. It is already unknown how many supremes died in swordless hands. Snoring, snoring. The ram supremely panted, his chest constantly undulating. Bingyu Supreme, only one line away from the invincible Supreme. At the back, it was the sacrifice of the Emperor Taishu, which is still not the opponent of Sword Unmatched. It can be said, today's Sword Unparalleled is already the first person under the Invincible Supreme. Invincible Supreme, his sword is unparalleled, and he is the undefeated king in the universe. Today's Sword Unparalleled, it is only the Middle Supreme, and it has the ability to kill half-step Invincible Supreme, even the weaker Invincible Supreme. I am afraid that Sword Unparalleled can beat his wrist if you wait until the Sword Unparalleled break through the High Supreme, or the Supreme Supreme, or even the Invincible Supreme. Who else can stop him in this world? Jian Wushuang, isn't it the second Taro? His thoughts flashed in the eyes of the Ram Supreme, and even a more amazing idea came into being. I'm afraid that until Jian Wushuang reaches the top state of supremacy, even if it is really Tu Luo Supreme Rebirth, it will not be Jian Wushuang's opponent. At that time, he was famous for the Titan Supreme and was named the Titan Excalibur. I was afraid that he would change his name to Wushan Excalibur. Shaking his head, the ram supremely felt terrified and did not dare to think further. Alas! Tai Luo's Excalibur entered the sheath inch by inch. The sword Wushuang looked at the Ram Supreme and said, "Ram Supreme, have you seen enough?" The Ram Supreme laughed and walked out of the void. Jian Wushuang looked at the Supreme Ram and shook his head. Regarding this Ram Supreme person, Although there is not much contact, Jian Wushuang's perception of it is not bad. His personality is more peaceful, and he prefers the old and good type. Just looking at his situation just now, he couldn't help but want to go to Bingyu Supreme. Jian Wushuang pleading. After the two chatted casually, Jian Wushuang took the initiative to open Jintian Bay and let him in. If the Ram Supreme stepped out of the land of God with him, it is inevitable that someone with a heart will calculate. In case of rethinking the selection of the disciples of the sect of religion, there will be a lot of trouble. Therefore, after Jian Wushuang discussed it with him, the Ram Supreme and heavily damaged Taro corpse was included in the town's monument. After all this, Jian Wushuang looked back at the core of the once defeated god's land, carefully bent his hands, and made a long bow. Jian Wushuang knew that Dao Yan's supreme body had been worn away, but instead of falling, it turned into countless divine powers scattered between the heavens and the earth to maintain the operation of the 99 Taos. Brother, I'm leaving, and I'll see you later, Jian Wushuang said softly, and immediately hesitated, striding towards the outside of the prohibition. One step across the dark yellow forbidden layer, the feeling of being caught in the warm ocean struck again. Opening his eyes again, Jian Wushuang has appeared outside the 99th prohibition. Outside the 99th ban, no one arrived. Jian Wushuang shook his head and immediately stepped away, rushing away. After Jian Wushuang went straight through dozens of prohibitions, he only saw the main gates of the virtual universe, Tianjiao. With a movement in his heart, Jian Wushuang urged the crystals of virtual power in his body, turning all his divine power into virtual power. I saw that there were still dozens of Tianjiao disciples. After the elimination, there were only a dozen or so disciples. Each one was full of panic and disappointment. He looked around carefully, for fear of prohibiting the sudden trigger. Bombing. At that time, the disciples of Tianmen, who had a relationship with Jian Wushuang before, had been almost wiped out. Only the first disciple of Tianmen was still alive, but their robes were torn, their hair was scattered, and their wolves were extremely scared. However, Fu Chen, who is from the refining Shenzong, is missing, but he has fallen into the land of God. Shaking his head, Jian Wushuang did not intend to say hello to them. Once he stepped, he would pass by them. Now that it has been confirmed that the Lord of Life Jingu Palace survives and has received its avenues, this land of gods naturally need not be treated anymore. However, Jian Wushuang was about to pass them by. There was a loud shout, but it was a sudden explosion. Slow. I saw the disciple looking at Jian Wushuang with a gloomy face that day, and Pai Xiao did not smile. Sir, this is about to go? Don't tell us. What's the situation ahead? As soon as this remark ended, others also looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang heard his words and frowned, and replied slightly, "The front is the same as here, but the power of restraint is much more turbulent and horrible, so I chose to return." Inability to move forward, return here? I saw the disciples narrowed their eyes that day, and sneered. I see that you have already entered the land of the gods, and got treasures. Are you ready to leave? As soon as this remark came to an end, everyone in the audience was shocked. How is this possible? No way. Others were suspicious the disciple twisted his neck that day, and said loudly, "Dear everyone, I have paid attention to this person before, and he is not restricted in the land of God. I saw him before during the battle with Yandan, who refined Shenzong. A force of restraint suddenly avoided him when he was about to meet him. Think about it. The force of restraint is unconscious. Why would this person avoid it? And this person is obviously similar to us. And even lower, why is he running in front of us?" The words fell, and everyone's face changed, slightly. Before the battle between Jian Wushuang and Yandan, although the battle was short and it was not an exaggeration to say that it was a spike. Someone still noticed the scene. The first disciple of Tianmen didn't say it was okay. As a reminder, everyone immediately responded. Yeah, why is this so? This man has an unusual atmosphere and is flat. Why didn't he target him before the ban? Only kill us? Could he look so good? There must be something strange about this. Chapter 45:09. Among the land of God, Tianjiao, who came from the top pedigrees, was quietly surrounded by the sword, unparalleled, and blocked the way. In just a few words, the first disciple of the heavenly gate has already placed the sword, unparalleled. The first disciple of Tianmen looked at the reaction of the crowd, and then looked at Jian Wushuang, who was expressionless, indifferent, and even sneered at the corner of his mouth. He looked around the crowd and said with a loud voice, "Dear everyone, I dare to say that this man must have a secret treasure that can hide his breath and avoid the power of restraint. Now that he has gained the benefit, he wants to leave. Do you agree?" Killing heart. As soon as this sentence came out, everyone's faces shrank, their eyes narrowed, and Xiang Jian's eyes became ill and greedy. That's right. There must be some secret treasure in this person who can escape these restraining forces. We have died so many people, and it was so easy to come here, and you got the benefit, and now you want to leave. How can there be such a good thing in the world? Boy, surrender the secrets of your body. We let you leave safely. In my opinion, this person happened to make us a wedding dress, and we saved the risk and went further. Yes, in my opinion, we might as well kill the kid first, and then the treasure's on him. Let's divide them one by one. For a moment, everyone stared at each other, smirking at the corners of their mouths. The evil of human nature is all bound by rules. Without rules, man will be like a beast, will not speak any morals, and release the most primitive greed and sin in human nature. And in this world of weak meat and strong food, respect for strength, the only constraint is who has the stronger strength and the harder fist. When the first disciple of Tianmen saw this, a sneer filled his heart. He didn't know if Jian Wushuang had a secret treasure which could circumvent the restraining power of this god's land. He also didn't know whether Jian Wushuang entered the core position of God's land and obtained any treasure. But these are not important, as long as the sword is unparalleled enough. As for the reason, my Tianmen disciples are almost wiped out. Why can you survive alone? This is the biggest reason. Shaking his head, he looked at Xiang Jianshuang with a hint of lightness in his eyes, as if the emperor had everything in his hand, and said, "Sir, I heard you're called Wushuang, right? Now, give you two choices. The first thing is that you just grab it and give up all resistance. Maybe we can leave you safely after we have searched you. Second, we will attack in groups and kill you directly." Jian Wushuang heard the words, a smile on his indifferent face suddenly. He laughed and sighed, glanced at the first disciple, and said sincerely, "Do you know why you died?" "Okay." The first apprentice in Tianmen frowned, some puzzled. "You died of too much talk." Jian Wushuang looked at the others who surrounded him again and said, "Why did you die?" Don't wait for them to reply. Jian Wushuang answered his own question. "You died of stupidity." Suddenly, the sword's 5 fingers were held on the hilt of the tailored Excalibur. Sword to cut. Boom. A white sword shaped on, like Bai Hong of Jinglong, suddenly pulled out of the scabbard of Tai Luo. Between the heavens and the earth, there is only this white swordman, a sword like a dragon, straight into the 9 clouds. The crisp sound of the sword, like a bomb, exploded in the land of the gods. Under a sword, whether it was the first disciple or the other 10, or so Qianjiao, just like the ants looking up to the sky, they were extremely small. Suddenly, the first disciple of Tianmen raised his head and looked at the sword mantle like the ocean and sea, with only terror on his face. Others were also replaced by shock on their faces. Under the lock of this sword energy, they could not even move their feet. Wow! Like a knife-cut tofu, this sword swept directly from more than a dozen tianjiao. After a sword, heaven and earth returned to Qingming. Only Jian Wushuang remained, standing in the land of Fengshen. All Tianjiao was beheaded and killed directly by this sword, and even Fei Hui was not left. For the current sword Wushuang, these are nothing but 8-star or 1-mark, 2-mark class vagrants, and it is easier to kill than kill an ant. Call out! Shaking his head, Wu Shou stepped down step by step, suddenly like a thunder, rushed towards the outside of Fengshen. Outside the land of God, Elder Shin's sickle looked somber and sat cross-legged. Boom! Suddenly, a dazzling sword light flashed in the land of the gods, and the elder sickle could not help but open his eyes to look. A familiar atmosphere is constantly rushing out. Someone came out. There was a hint of Morihan in the eyes of the elder sickle, and he stood up, blocking the part of the exit from the land of God. On the other side, the Red Whale group headed by Luo Ming, the head of the family, also felt the breath in the land of the gods. Someone was about to rush out of his eyes. Only one person came out. Master Bingyu. Surely it's Lord Bingyu. Small boys, as I prepare to meet Master Bingyu, I wish you Bingyu triumphant return and victory. Luo Ming, the master of the house, cheered up and said with a smile, getting closer, getting closer. In the crowd's perception, the people in this land of God are reaching the extreme speed, and they keep getting closer to the exit of the land of God. Next moment, a thin figure of black robe suddenly rushed out of the land of the gods. Mr. Bingyu. Not Mr. Bingyu. Who is this person? What about Lord Morina? The Red Whale helped everyone look at the figure of the black robe, and couldn't help but look. Elder Shinsickle, his pupils suddenly shrank, and his face changed slightly. Missed double. Suddenly, Elder Shinsickle's face turned into an iron blue. Father and son have the heart, and the one who can most notice the breath of Yandan is the Elder Sickle. On Jian Wushuang, he felt the breath of Yen Dawn Death. Miss Shuang, say, did you kill my son? Suddenly Elder Shenxian stared at Jian Wushuang, sternly, shouting sternly. Sword Wushuang, who had just stepped out of the land of sealed gods, frowned slightly when he heard the question. Why is this sick guy here? He shook his head, and Jian Wushuang didn't take the matter seriously. Don't think about it. The elder Shenxia was afraid to follow him all the way and wanted to join Yen Dan in and out and assassinate him. I killed it. How? Jian Wushuang glanced at him and said lightly, it really is you. Seeing Jian Wushuang admitted so generously, the elder Shenxian suddenly became angry and furious. His murderous eyes flashed to the extreme, roaring, Misty Double, you're here. Chapter 45:10. Boom. Endless power is gathered in the hands of the elder sickle. His whole robe agitated, his eyes flashed with murder, and a violent force shook the void. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes, and just holding the sword of the Tai Luo divine sword, he didn't know what he thought and loosened his fingers again. Want to run? The elder sickle smiled angrily, waved the terror power in his hand, and turned to chase the sword, unparalleled. Miss Shuang, you killed Yen Dan. No matter if you go to heaven today, this one will kill you. He growled in the back. Jian Wushuang did not look back, but sneered at the corner of his mouth. The elder sickle, as early as refining Shenzong, he moved his mind to kill this man, and then quickly, originally he could not find a suitable opportunity, but now the opportunity has come. However, this land of gods is a place that stirs up the situation, and the eyes of all the major forces gather. It is inevitable that the power of this sickle will be exposed, and it will easily cause trouble. It's better to lead it out, leave the land of the god, and then kill it with a sword. Huh. Elder Jian Wushuang and Shun Si were very fast. The two turned one after the other into a streamer, and soon left the land of God. In the empty land of God, there was only a group of people in the Red Whale Gang. Large, big master, there is no breath in the land of God. A Red Whale Gang whispered, Master, Master Binyu, have you been killed in it? Another gang of Red Whale Gang spoke back. Luo Ming, the master of the Red Whale, did not speak, but hesitated on his face. Before entering this land of God, Xiuwei is the strongest, but the second-class Xiuwei. But Lord Binyu has the strength to stabilize his existence. How could he be killed? If it weren't for the unexpected, there would be only one possibility. Luo Ming looked up sharply, looking at where Jian Wushuang left. He could have noticed before that Lord Binyu had a strong animosity towards the boy from Wushan called Wushuang. With the power of Lord Binyu, he can be regarded by him and become hostile. At least it must be a level of existence with him. Right? Go. Let's catch up and see. Luo Ming opened his thoughts. Bang! I saw the space warship from the Red Whale Gang speeding up and chasing towards the place where Jian Wushuang and Elder Shin's sickle disappeared. Call out. Huh. Jian Wushuang and Elder Shin's sickle kept flying in the air one after the other. The sword has no two sides and no expression, and the speed is not fast or slow. It has not completely shaken the Elder Shin sickle, but also kept a distance just able to hang him, and gradually swept to the remote part of the universe. Damn it! The Elder Sickle had a somber expression, and his anger had completely stunned him. He didn't think about why an 8-star dummy in Jian Wushuang could cut and kill Yan Dan, who broke through the mark. He also didn't think about why he could not catch up with Jian Wushuang because of his foremarks. He now has only one idea in his head. That is to catch up, to kill the sword unparalleled. After a few hours, under the force of the two, they have crossed several star fields and have a distance of nearly 10 million miles from the land of the gods. The two gradually entered a desolate star field. Just here, Jian Wushuang's imagination spread out and found that there were no silhouettes, and after Chi-Chi's eyes locked on it, he couldn't help taking a deep breath and gradually stopped. Ha 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 ha, fought double. You run, why don't you run? When the Elder Shin sickle saw this, he suddenly laughed excitedly. He only thought that Jian Wushuang was exhausted and could not escape. Miss Shuang, since you can't escape, then you are ready to die. Go and be buried with my son. Immediately, the Elder Sickle laughed and calmed down, replaced by endless resentment. Yan Dan was his life's work, distracting sickle. Huh! He flipped his right hand, and a black sickle tied with a chain as a handle appeared in his hand. The black light on the blade of this sickle not only has extremely powerful attack power, but also hooks out the monk's spirit and is imprisoned on the sickle forever, suffering torture day and night. This is the notorious murder weapon of this virtual universe. As soon as this distracting sickle came out, there was a sound of ghosts crying in the void, as if there were countless injustices and ghosts imprisoned in this sickle, roaring and roaring. The sword Wushuang turned around, holding the hilt of the Tai Luo Excalibur with his right hand, his expression indifferent. This Elder Sickle is a 3-mark practice corresponding to the supreme of the divine universe. If Jian Wushuang has not yet broken through the medium supremacy, it may be quite tricky to deal with this person, but after breaking through the medium supreme, the Elder Sickle to him, but the invincible ants. Shen-Si, you want to see your son Yan Dan? Sword Wushuang faintly spoke. What do you think? Elder God Sickle sneered and asked. Now, he doesn't want to talk to Jian Wushuang at all. Between his words, The distracting sickle in his hand has turned into a black streamer, and he shoots at Jian Wushuang's groundbreaking. Very well, then I will do as you wish, and I will send you to accompany him. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, and the corner of his mouth suddenly opened a low smile. Dead. Huh. The sword was doubled. This move is like a thunderblast. Taro sword code. Second style, dawn. A golden light appeared. The whole world is like this line of golden light tearing and spreading thick xiamang. Fortune bell god show. Yin and yang are separated. This sword splits the heavens and the earth from yin and yang. When? A crisp sound came, and the dawning sword light, transformed by the sword, unparalleled, was directly mounted on the parting sickle that came from the laser. Suddenly, this notorious distracting sickle was full of dense, cobweb-like mouths for only a short time. Huh! Spurred again by the sword. Suddenly the whole handle was broken and broken. The sword, unparalleled, like Jin Long, passed through the body of the elder sickle. Puff! The figure of the sword, unparalleled, appeared behind the elder sickle, scattered all over the body, with golden light. A human-shaped cave has appeared in the chest of Elder Shenxian. This power. Elder Shenxian turned his head blankly, staring at Jian Wushuang in shock. You hide Shiwei. No, you really are not from our universe. The elder sickle's face showed a sorrowful look, but before he could say a word, the breath quickly languished, and the whole person dissipated and perished at the speed visible to the naked eye. I hate it. In the extremely reluctant voice of Elder Shensickle, his whole body shattered by sword gas began to disintegrate. Sword indifferent, did not answer the words of the elder sickle, but looked at the elder sickle so calmly, the body collapsed and disintegrated, and then dissipated in the heavens and the earth. Chapter 45:11. Elder Shenxian is dead, as Jian Wushuang said. Since Elder Shenxian could not bear Yandan, then he became a good man once and sent Elder Shenxian to accompany Yandan. This time, I went to the land of the gods and gathered a lot of arrogant people in the virtual universe. They were all killed by Jian Wushuang. Speaking of which, can I count the curve to help the divine universe? Jian Wushuang shook his head, slightly indifferently. Bang! Just then, a loud boom came from the sky. Okay. Jian Wushuang looked up and saw the head of the Red Whale gang, driving a space battleship, quickly moving towards this side. On the battleship, Luo Ming's two-footed footstand was looking at Jian Wushuang with his eyes on him. And before driving to Jian Wushuang's side completely, he saw Jian Wushuang holding the sword to his right, and the elder Shensickle gradually disappeared. Suddenly, the big head Luo Ming's eyes on Shangjin Wushuang only felt as if they were invisible. Two Shendians shot from Jian Wushuang's eyes, and his heart trembled instantly. In a flash, he reacted, and he was definitely not an opponent of Jian Wushuang. The elder Shenxian also noticed that his 3-strength power is only a small level lower than him. He asked himself that although he could also kill the elder sickle, he would never be as free-hand as Jian Wushuang. With a slight blink of his eyes, Luo Ming could not help but think of the ice cream supreme without sound, and quickly exclaimed, "Hurry up! Turn around! Don't move forward!" Then, the aggressive red whale helped everyone to quickly turn the space battleship and shoot towards the way. Come where you want to go. Go where you want to go. Jian Wushuang saw this and could not help but sneer. Huh. At the next moment, Sword Wu stepped on his feet. His body swept away, turned into a cannonball, and rushed towards the battleship of the Red Whale gang. No, this of Chase is here. Run away. Suddenly, the Red Whale helped the big head Luo Ming, startled with a shock. Boom. Finally, the U-turn was complete, and the spaceship fire was fully fired. Flying away, Jian Wushuang chased for a long time and found that he could only keep up with the speed. After he couldn't catch up, he couldn't help laughing. He raised the Taro Excalibur and pointed his sword at Luo Ming on the spaceship. The Red Whale Gang, right? If you move forward 10 feet further, believe it or not, this dare to kill you in your nest and cut off the grass. The sound of the sword, unparalleled, sounded like a blast of thunder. Suddenly, the space warship of the Red Whale suddenly braked and stopped in the 10 feet. Luo Ming looked back at Xiang Jianwushuang and felt anguish in her heart. What's the fun of my special mother's visit? This is all right. I was arrested. Jian Wushuang looked at the stopped space battleship, stepped out, and the universe star sky shrank at his feet. After only 3 steps, Jian Wushuang landed on the bow deck of the space battleship. Mist and Mister, little ones haven't seen anything, they don't know anything. Luo Ming looked at the sword Wushuang who came with the sword, and his face became frightened, and when he knelt to the ground, he shouted continuously. When Jian Wushuang saw the situation, he shook his head, this 4-marked virtuoso, who was unexpectedly so cartilage. This seat asks you, how did you meet that Bingyu? Jian Wushuang said lightly, he is not a man of indiscriminate killing, but if this group of infamous star thieves knows their identities, they can only do one thing that kills them and kills them. Masters back and back to the misty fog. The young children who led the Red Whale Gang that day were sweeping through the stars of the universe and were planning to find the idea of the Beating Teeth Festival. They just came across the ice cream grandma, who was alone. Well, I encountered the lack of morality of Bingyu and was about to go and rob a whole treasure, but the result was not his opponent. Luo Ming said quickly, Jian Wushuang can be considered to understand the cause and effect. The thing is very simple. It is a story of robbery. After he finished speaking, Jian Wushuang didn't reply, but his face was cloudy for a while. Looking at it like this, these star thieves should not know their true identity, or even know that there is a different universe. After all, this kind of thing is the most secret, whether it is in the divine universe or the virtual universe. Only the small group of people standing at the top of the universe can be qualified to know about the 2 universes. Although this Luo Ming has 4 marks of virtual respect, but his root identity is too low. Obviously, there is no channel to know these things. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed a little hesitation. After thinking for a while, when Jian Wushuang couldn't help but chose to do something, Luo Ming seemed to notice the flash of murder in Jian Wushuang's eyes, and said quickly, Master Wushuang's life. As long as Wushuang adults are willing to let go of the young, and the young are willing to respect you, from then on, for your adult, you will be saddled up and down the horse. As she talked, Luo Ming raised her face and continued to flatter and smile. Jian Wushuang saw this and couldn't help seeing the joy in his heart. The killing in his heart was reduced by a few points. He shook his head and said, You and Bingyu say the same thing? Luo Ming heard the words and could not help but smirk and scratched his head. Jian Wushuang didn't ignore him anymore, but after thinking for a moment, he said, This seat is not incapable of letting you go. In this way, let this seat plant a ban in your source of life. Then, obediently, for my use, this seat will no longer embarrass you. How? As soon as this remark came to an end, Luo Ming's heart was overjoyed. Let Jian Wushuang plant a ban in the root of life, which is equivalent to giving his life to Jian Wushuang. In the future, life and death are just a thought of Jian Wushuang. But how about that? If you do not agree, waiting for yourself will only follow in the footsteps of the elder sickle. Luo Ming can become a star thief who everyone shouts, but he has lived well now. In addition to his outstanding strength, there is the most important point. Observe the master. Luo Ming quickly slammed his 3 heads at Jian Wushuang, released his defense, and let Jian Wushuang's big hand rest on his skull and planted a destruction prohibition in his body. The other red whales helped everyone, and it was so true when they saw the big head. They naturally agreed. Jian Wushuang made the same way. After a while, I saw the red whale helping people who were full of boats, kneeling down towards Jian Wushuang one after another, and shouted in congratulations. "Ill wait to welcome the young masters of the mist." For a while, the voices of the Shuangshou master came together and went straight to the sky. They know that Jian Wushuang will be their king. Jian Wushuang stood on the deck and nodded expressionlessly. "Get up." Chapter 45:12. Wow. As the sword Wushuang's right hand was lifted and time passed, everyone on the deck of the space battleship rose up. "Young master, what do we need to do?" Luo Ming's eyebrows were pleasing to the eye, and he said congratulatingly. For him, obedience to sword unparalleled, but obedience to obedience supreme changed individuals, and there was not much discomfort. Jian Wushuang thought for a while and said, "You are business as usual, but you need to pay attention to the dynamics of the top forces. But any trace-level person who has any top forces suddenly leaves the Zongmen and behaves abnormally." "Yes." Luo Ming nodded. "For the Red Whale Gang, there is not much else. That is, many people—" "Well," Jian Wushuang groaned for a moment or two, and then said again, "Also, you send people into the void to investigate. Don't miss every crack in the void. See if there are a lot of people in the void cracks or abnormal images such as stern defense. If found, the investigation will be cleared back to me." After speaking, Jian Wushuang stretched out his fingertips a bit on Luo Ming's eyebrows, locking the induction between the two, and then if he needed to pass a message or the like, Luo Ming could pass the voice directly to him. "Yes, obey the Lord's order." Luo Ming didn't shirk and nodded heavily, although he wondered, why did Jian Wushuang ask him to investigate the void and focus on the movements of the top forces? These things are not something that a disciple of refining God should pay attention to. However, he has always been clever, knowing that there are some things that should not be asked, so don't ask them. Asking will only bring himself to death. Since Jian Wushuang said, "Obedience he is a decent person." "Well, you go." Sword Wushuang nodded with satisfaction and waved his right hand to let the Red Whale Gang away. A moment later, in the universe, only Jian Wushuang stood alone. The people of the Red Whale Gang have been reduced to 0. According to the command of Jian Wushuang, part of them went to the forbidden space, and part of them went to the top sections. Jian Wushuang did not leave in a hurry, but landed into a deserted star, and his body shot directly into the heart of the earth. Taking out the God of God token, I saw that the mirror surface of the token was twisted, and a ripple like the water surface appeared. Immediately, the face of Zeus appeared in the mirror. Sword unparalleled. In the mirror, Zhou God nodded towards Jian Wushuang. "Master Elder God." Sword Warrior slightly arched his hand, and then told the of the universe that he had recently received the information, and at the same time admitted frankly that he had battled with the Ice God Supreme and beheaded him. Hearing this news, there was no surprise on the face of Zhou God, but he sighed softly. The old man guessed that this would be the case. The enmity between you and Bingyu Supreme has reached a point where it is endless and difficult to resolve. After a long accumulation of hatred, the old man has sent you two to the virtual universe together this time. I want to make the two of you completely in the virtual universe and settle the dispute between the two of you. Otherwise, once the war of catastrophe begins, if we can't unite as one, we will calculate each other and sooner or later will cause great disaster. Jian Wushuang nodded when he heard the words. He understood the mind of the universe. As the Lord of the universe, the of the universe is like the monarch of a country. What he pays attention to is the technique of balance. A bowl of water must be leveled. If it is in the divine universe, Jian Wushuang and Bingyu Supreme will inevitably fall into an embarrassing situation. If you intervene, you will inevitably be biased. At that time, there will always be a bit of hatred in the other party. And if you don't step in, just ignore it, and it will attract verbs. Rather than let Jian Wushuang and Bingyu Supreme both end their enmity in the virtual universe, the weak lose and the strong win, and no one can say good things. The Zhou was silent for a while, and then smiled and said, "But finally there is good news. I know the situation of Dao Yan. Although the situation is not very good, he has not fallen, and he may have no chance to rescue him in the future." As for what Elder Banshan told you, the old man also noticed that in our divine universe, there must be a virtual universe, a chess piece that was laid many years ago. It's just that this person has been rooted deep in our camp for many years, and this fashion is not the time to solve him. Oh, Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows when he heard the words, and said, "In the heart of Lord Morpheus, who has this person been confirmed?" It's okay to talk about it, but the old man already has some doubts about this person. Well, Jian Wushuang, take care of yourself over there. The two chatted for a few more seconds, and then the God of God hurriedly hung up the call. It can be seen that when Jian Wushuang was exploring the news in the virtual universe, the of the universe was not idle, and he had begun to lay out to deal with the things in the virtual universe. Not long after hanging up the phone with Zhou God, Jian Wushuang released the Ram Supreme from the town monument. The two agreed, and when they met together in the void, they dispersed. The sword warriors turned back to the land of the gods, found the giant bone bird, and stepped over and stepped on the backbone of the giant bone bird. The bone bird made a long sing and immediately turned its wings into a streamer shooting towards the Lian Shenzong. A month later, wow, the giant bone bird stopped in front of the Lian Shenzong mountain gate, and Jian Wushuang stepped down and walked towards the sovereign's hall. In this month, Jian Wushuang kept on the road nonstop, but he did not know that the matter of sealing the land of God directly set off a big earthquake in the entire virtual universe. All the Tianjiao who went to the land of God's seal was wiped out by the army. No one lived. When this news came back to the respective ancestors of Tianjiao, suddenly the top forces of the entire virtual universe shook. In the past years, the top sectarian forces sent Tianjiao to the land of the gods. Although there were deaths and injuries, there has never been an entire military annihilation like this time. And that's not much. The most amazing thing is that the Tianmen Palm teacher calculated the death time of Tianjiao under the door, which was a shocking discovery. This time, the 10 strongest Tianjiao who went to the land of Fengshan actually fell at the same time. What is this concept? It is tantamount to having a terrifying force far beyond these people in the land of the gods, killing them all in an instant. This is definitely not a means of prohibition. For a while, www.novel, the land of the gods of gods, was surging. Refining Shenzong also received this message. Mist and Mist, the disciples responsible for guarding the Lord's hall, looked at his face calm and unscathed Jian Wushuang, and he could not help but widen his eyes, and there was an unbelievable color in his eyes. Doesn't it mean that all the people who went to the land of the gods have fallen? What's up? Jian Wushuang frowned, with some doubts in his heart. Immediately, he said in a deep voice, "Trouble informed the suzerain. Wushuang has something to see." Chapter 45:13. The disciple in charge of guarding the sovereign's hall took a short while to react, and quickly apologized and smiled at Jian Wushuang, then turned and entered the sovereign's hall. Not long after, the disciple came out and whispered, "Wushuang, let's go in. Lord Sovereign is in there, but Lord Sovereign seems to be in a bad mood. If you have any bad news, how many say it again?" "I know." Jian Wushuang smiled at him, then strode into the sovereign hall. The sovereign hall is dark all the year round, and the candlesticks made from skulls emit a faint light, adding a little gloom to the sovereign hall that was originally only a little dark. Jian Wushuang looked up and saw the Lord Lian Shen sitting on a Bisensen's chair with his head tilted, his hands condensed into a fist, leaning on his temple, his elbows against the armrest, and his face was tired. Obviously, Yandan death also hit him to a certain extent. Master Sovereign, Jian Wushuang arched his hand at him. Okay. Lian Shenzong nodded, then took a deep breath and sat upright. He didn't rush to ask Jian Wushuang what he found in the land of the gods, but he said, Miss Shuang, do you know that Yandan and Elder Shen Sik have fallen? Hearing this, Jian Wushuang was in a daze, but fortunately on the way back, he had already set up answers to various inquiries and unexpected situations, and his face was shocked. What? God! Elder Sickle has fallen? Lord Sovereign, I only know about Yandan fall, but I didn't expect that Elder Shen Sickle also. Well, not long after Yandan died, Elder Shenxian died. The Lian Shenzong nodded, then his eyes narrowed, and his face suddenly became a little bit more sharp. Looking at Jian Wushuang, he said, Miss Shuang, according to the message of Elder Shen Sik disciples, he said that Elder Shen Sik left in Yandan. After Zongmen, I followed you and Yandan. Presumably you should know how Yandan and Elder Shen Sik died. Jian Wushuang heard the words, and then he could not help but show his doubts, and then pretended to panic, and asked, Master, do you not think that the death of Elder God Sickle has something to do with me? The Lord of the Refining God heard that he did not answer Jian Wushuang's question directly, but said faintly, Miss Shuang, I think you should explain to the Lord, why this time when you went to the land of God, everyone else died, and you, but I came back alive and unharmed, and I remember that in this trip to the land of the gods, many of them have been cultivated a lot higher than you. Among these strange things, you can hear them. Jian Wushuang heard the words, and his face was struggling. It seemed that he was hesitant to say, after struggling for a long while, then made a decision and bit his teeth. Master, Yandan was indeed killed by me. This is not to blame the disciple, but that Yandan deceives people too much. Soon after we entered the land of the gods, he wanted to kill me, helpless to fight against him. As for how the elder Shenxian died, the disciples really don't know. It really is Yandan you killed. In the eyes of the Lian Shen sovereign, the light rose sharply by 3 inches, and there was a touch of anger in his face. Even if Yandan is not good, he is also a disciple who he brought up with his own hands. He snorted coldly, and the refining God sovereign asked again, Miss Shuang, let's not talk about the elder sickle first. This sovereign asks you why the people of other sects died. You don't tell me it's all forbidden killed. In this regard, Jian Wushuang had a countermeasure and bowed his head and replied, the Lord Sovereign didn't know. When we entered the land of God's seal, there was a strong one in the Red Whale gang. This person's cultivation is at least 5 marks. Not only can he ignore the prohibition in God's seal land, unblocked and killing in it. Jian Wushuang said slowly, pushing all the responsibilities to Bingyu Supreme. Now that Bingyu is dead, there is no evidence of natural death. And with a little investigation, we can know that the Red Whale has recently come to the top power. When the Red Whale went to the land of the gods, they also made a huge momentum, which can be investigated. Hearing here, the Lord of the Refining God frowned. Later, the Master of the Refining asked Jian Wushuang why he could escape from the sky. In response to this, Jian Wushuang also had a countermeasure and took out the heavily damaged Taro corpse, telling that he relied on the Taro corpse to resist a breath before he escaped. The Lord of the Refining God slightly sensed the injuries on the corpse of Tai Luo and found that the terrible divine power fluctuations left by the blow of Tai Su God Emperor still contained in the injuries, and he no longer doubted him. You step back first. This Lord needs to think carefully. After a while, the master of the refining waved his hand wearily, signaling that the sword Wushuang was leaving. Yes, Jian Wushuang condescended. In the sovereign's hall, there was a return to silence. Inside the gloomy lord's hall, the lord of the refining god reached out and rubbed his eyebrows. His eyes looked far away, and his eyes kept thinking. Just now, on the corpse of the Taro of Jian Wushuang, he sensed a strong wave of divine power. This wave of divine power, in terms of strength, is not under him. At least it is the invincible supreme of the divine universe. Then everything naturally makes sense. I'm afraid Elder God Sickle is also dead in the hands of the invincible supreme of the divine universe. How recently has the penetration of the divine universe into our virtual universe been so frequent? I am afraid that the war is about to begin. I have to plan for the refining of the sect of God early. He thought silently. Once the war is about to begin, he will be summoned by the Void God's invitation to go to the battlefield of the Void Confinement to form an army and attack the divine universe. No one can say whether they can come back this time. Before that, you have to decide on the next master's choice. The light of the Lien Shin monarch's eyes flickered and fell into thought. It was not long before he sighed. Is the fog double? Back to Xianshan, it's getting late. While under the mountain, Jian Wushuang encountered the enchanting woman Jiumu again. She looked at Jian Wushuang with expressionless face. Her lips opened slightly, and she wanted to say something, but finally she sighed and lowered her head. Jian Wushuang shook his head and had no intention to talk to her, and shot straight into the seventh corpse hole on the top of the mountain. Open the enchantment at will, and seal the gate of the corpse hole. Jian Wushuang released the corpse of Tai Luo from the void with a slight pity in his eyes. At the next moment, Jian Wu sat down with his hands on his knees, and innumerable divine power poured into his hands, sinking into the corpse of Tai Luo. Suddenly, the body of Taro's corpse, like a rag sack, began to recover quickly. Chapter 45:14. After 3 months of enrichment, Taro's corpse finally recovered a lot. Although there were still some injuries, it was no harm and will gradually recover over time. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang finally took a long breath. Close. With a big wave of his hand, the sword Wushuang put the corpse of Tai Luo into the town's monument. During these 3 months, the news of the land of God gradually spread, and it was no longer limited to being spread in the hands of the patriarchs, but spread throughout the universe. Suddenly, Lien Shenzong was uproaring. Brother, Yandan is dead. Not only Brother Yandan died, but also Elder Shinsickle and the accompanying Rookie Fuchen all died. This time, only Wushuang came back alive from the land of God. Countless disciples of refining Shenzong whispered. Subsequently, the sovereign lord announced the death news of Yandan and Elder Shinsickle. Although the refining suzerain did not say exactly how Yandan died, countless disciples of refining suspiciously guessed Jian Wushuang's head. The feud between Jian Wushuang and Yandan is obvious to all, and Yandan is a man who must report. These disciples have long been determined that this time when going to the land of God, there will be a life and death battle between Jian Wushuang and Yandan. Then Jian Wushuang is back alive now. The victory or defeat of this battle is self-evident. Yandan death is not so simple, but involves the most important issue later. The refining God sovereign is about to abdicate. Yandan was originally the replacement of the next refining God sovereign. If Yandan dies, who will take over the position of the refining God sovereign? Suddenly, countless people set their eyes on Jian Wushuang's head. The ultimate qualifications are enough to compete with Yandan, even stronger, and supported by Elder Wind Elders. This is almost the perfect candidate for the next sovereign. As a result, many disciples or ordinary elders who originally followed Yin Dan and intended to be slaves of the dragon minister approached Jian Wushuang and released their good intentions towards Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's performance is also remarkable. One by one accepted the goodwill conveyed by these people. The top of the moon. Jian Wushuang sat on the stone bed in the corpse cave cross-legged, bid farewell to a refining elder, shook his head slightly. Originally, he lurked undercover refining Shinzong for the purpose of inquiring information. However, he did not expect that he would become the first master of refining Shinzong. Fortune is really confusing. At this time, from the long-lived Red Whale gang who came to his head, Luo Ming's rumor came from his mind. Young master, our people have discovered the situation in the void. Luo Ming was tired, but more excited voices came. Directly said the point. Jian Wushuang replied indifferently, yes. Luo Ming gave a respectful response and quickly replied, young master, according to our inspection, a total of 97 voids were found in the void, and these 97 void cracks were guarded by the strong. But the first 89 cracks in the void are a bit weird because our people were there and found the traces of the ancient Hengshuan that disappeared long ago in the void universe. Gu Heng Su Zun is a peak strongman who became famous before 50,000 virtual times. He once dominated the characters of an era, but before 30,000 virtual times, that is, his coercion on our virtual universe reached the highest peak. When he disappeared for no reason, the people of the original virtual universe thought that Gu Heng Su Zun had fallen unexpectedly, but he never thought that he was hiding in the void, forbidden space. In addition, around the 89th void, there are many other virtual force fluctuations that are not weaker than Gu Heng Su Zun. The small estimates are all in the same era as Gu Heng Su Zun, or even older. Character. They were all hiding around the void crack, and something must have happened. Okay. Jian Wushuang nodded when he heard the words, and his heart was slightly happy, but Gu Jingwu was set on his face. You marked me with a detailed map of the void forbidden area and put it in your Red Whale base camp. This seat will be picked up from time to time. Remember to mark the 89 cracks with extra care. Yes, master, no problem. Luo Ming quickly patted her chest and promised. Well, are there any other visions of other top forces? Jian Wushuang asked casually. Back to the young master, no abnormalities have been found for the time being. It is good. Jian Wushuang nodded his head and casually commanded, if you have enough staff, go and help this place investigate an organization called by ? As soon as the voice fell, Luo Ming's face changed greatly. Master, have you caught these lunatics? You know them? Jian Wushuang frowned and came to interest. Luo Ming, who was at the messenger's face, became dignified, holding her breath. Young master, little does not know much about phasing or the entire virtual universe. Not much about this organization. All I know is that they are mysterious and powerful. They are usually not exposed to the universe and belong to a hidden world. No one knows where they are hiding, but once they are born, major events in the universe are bound to happen. Among them, the leader of the Byte organization, the powerful one, is far more powerful than I can guess. I remember that there was a son of a 6-mark vein respecter who angered the Byte organization and was killed. The Lord of the Holy Land's 6-marked virtual respect went to seek out the trouble of the organization and wanted to get justice for the dead son. As a result, the 6-marked virtual respect was directly beheaded by the phasing organization. Even the Manchu, they were all implicated. All the tens of thousands of disciples, including the elders of the Trace class, were all beheaded and killed overnight. Jian Wushuang heard his words. His pupils shrunk slightly, and after a moment of groaning, he said, let us stop investigating the phasing organization for the time being and continue to stare at the trends of the top forces. Yes. Luo Ming heard a sigh of relief, and if Jian Wushuang strongly asked him to look for the investigation of the organization, he would not dare to refuse, but he was convinced that as long as he dared to investigate the organization, he would definitely cause death. A few more words were ordered. Jian Wushuang broke the communication between the two. Jian Wushuang reached out his finger, wrote the word bid on the stone bed, and frowned. The death of Taylor Supreme is related to this Fae, and the corpse of Terra S is also sold by the Fae organization to the Refining God sect. At that time, in the Joyao star field of the divine universe, the group of mysterious black robes who claimed to be 7 and 9 was also from the Sweet organization, looking for Master Xuani. What is the purpose of this group of people? What is the relationship between them and Master Xuani? Without a word for a night, Jian Wushuang reached out his hand, brushed off the word bit, and looked up outside the cave. A ray of sunlight has entered through the entrance of the cave. Jian Wushuang stood up and exhaled a sigh of breath. Chapter 45:15. Days pass by in such waves and tranquility. For several years, in addition to the occasional communication with Luo Ming, Jian Wushuang exchanged elders with Elder Banshan or Elder Feng from time to time. In addition, Jian Wushuang immersed himself in cultivation and cultivated himself by hand, revealing himself to the mark. This naturally caused a great shock in the refining Shinzong, and some people who were still erratic had completely determined Jian Wushuang and would become the next candidate for the reign of Shinzong and leaned towards Jian Wushuang. The sovereign lord of the gods seemed to plan the same way. Occasionally, he called Shang Jianwushuang to go to the Lord's Hall and talked about the Tao, and then he fought with Jian Wushuang, and then repeatedly confirmed the identity of Jian Wushuang. Secondly, he also hinted at Jian Wushuang. Leaving soon, Jian Wushuang is likely to take over the position of sovereign. The virtual force universe seems calm, but the divine universe is different. In several correspondences with the gods of the universe, Jian Wushuang learned that in the extraterrestrial battlefields of the divine universe, the imaginary attack on the divine universe by the virtual universe has become more and more, and the war is likely to be triggered immediately. On this day, outside the Refining God sect, a stranger suddenly came, refining the hall of the sovereign of the sect, a strong, burly old man with white hair and waist and a bare upper body, wearing only a pair of black trousers, slowly turning 2 silver in his hands. The white-haired, burly old man's bare upper body was covered with scar-like long scars, and the 2 silver spheres turning in his hands played a soft sound, like a thunderous thunder every time they collided. Electric arc. He just stood there, and there was a gulf like a prism, like a mountain of Wuyue Taishan spreading out, even faintly overwhelming the Lord of Refining God. Master, you are here this time. Is that battle finally about to begin? The sovereign lord said, humbly and haughtily. Yes. The white-haired and burly old man nodded, and Shen said, Master Zushen's seal is about to be lifted. For a maximum of 1 minute, Master Shushan can completely unlock the seal. It is when we break into the divine universe. The envoy came this time to prepare you 1 or 2 to explain clearly the aftermath of refining the deities, and then follow the envoy to enter the void forbidden area, waiting for the Lord Shushan to send. Is this battle finally coming? The Lord of the Refining God murmured to himself, and a light flashed in his eyes. After taking a deep breath, the Lord of the Refining Gods arched back and said, Sergeant, this seat understands. Okay. The white-haired and burly old man nodded with satisfaction and said, 8 wastes, the ambassador will stay here for 1 or 2. You will now explain the aftermath. It is good. The Lord of the Refining God nodded, then walked out of the hall. His face flashed with hesitation. It seems that it is time to really decide that the next master to choose after he leaves. After a second or 2 of groaning, a decisive flash of light appeared in the eyes of the master of the refining god, and a deep voice opened. His voice was like a thunderous thunder, which blew directly above the Lien Shenzong and passed into the ears of every disciple of the Lien Shenzong. I have a sense of heaven, and soon after this suzerain, he will leave the refining deities to explore the true meaning of the avenue. Therefore, the suzerain decided to make his disciple Wu Shuang take the role of temporary suzerainter and monitor the movement of the entire Suzi. The 5 elders and elders jointly assisted. If Wu Shuang violates the interests of the suzerain or the leader has no responsibility, he shall be jointly dismissed. If the suzerain hasn't returned for a long time, Wu Shuangli will do his best to manage it, but he will live up to the suzerain's trust, but he will truly accept the unification and change to the position of the suzerain. Disciple Xian Shuang, head to the sovereign hall to hear the seal. As soon as this remark came to an end, the same stone suddenly stirred up 1,000 layers of waves, and the whole audience fell into a short silence, and then it was boiling. What? Jian Wushuang is about to take over from the next master? Is it so fast? Master Sovereign is leaving? Duan Ti, I have to wait for Wushuang to wait. All of a sudden, countless disciples were stunned and shocked, and the elder Feng, who was condensing the corpse of the god, even heard 3 words of good, and his eyes filled with laughter. Miss Shuang, my husband congratulates you. In one of the halls, Elder Banshan, who was practicing cross-legged, walked out of the hall slowly, looking at a boiling refining god, with a strange face on his face. This boy, is he going to be the Lord? He murmured and shook his head. After sneaking into the enemy's sect, he became the enemy's head directly, which is really rare. He had some expectations. After Wu Shuang assumed the post of supremacy, to what extent would Lien Shenzong lead? 7 dead caves in Shurian Mountain. Here are the chief disciples, such as Angry Bear, Bone Wing, and Zheng Heng, whose complexions are extremely complicated. At the beginning, Jian Wushuang was just a newcomer in their eyes, but in just 10 years, this misty pair not only killed Yen Dan and broke the mark. Now he must serve as the next sovereign of the refining god sect, directly reaching they can't look beyond their reach. It really sighs. I knew this guy, not an underground bug, but a heavenly dragon. The angry bear who once fought with Jian Wushuang once shook his head and said with emotion, when he was defeated by Jian Wushuang in the first move, he knew that Jian Wushuang was by no means a thing in the pool. Now, at first glance, it really met his guess. Shurian Mountain hillside location. A red jerks that appeared enchanting in red leaned on the door of the corpse hole with fragrant shoulders. The growth speed of this man made her feel a little distorted. I'm afraid the next time I meet again, it's not the Master Wu Shuang, but the Lord Sovereign. Suddenly, no matter the disciples or elders in the refining Shenzong, they looked up and looked at the sky with a wonderful expression. All in all, when the refining suzerain's words fell, the whole refining Suzim burst. Shurian Mountain Peak, I'm going to be the master now? Jian Wushuang touched his nose, let alone the others were stunned, and even he himself felt a bit confused. He had speculated that the sovereign would pass the position of the sovereign to him, but he did not expect that all this would come so quickly. Shaking his head, Jian Wushuang didn't think too much. After collecting the corpse of Tai Luo God, he stepped on his feet and shot towards the main hall of the sovereign. This time, the disciples responsible for guarding the hall saw Jian Wushuang. The respect on his face had reached the extreme. First, he trembled and asked hello to Jian Wushuang, for fear that Jian Wushuang would leave a bad impression on him. And then quickly Jian Wushuang welcomed him. Entering the main hall, Jian Wushuang saw the refining god lord of the high seat and the white-haired burly old man with a naked upper body and a thunderball in his hand. When Jian Wushuang looked at the man, the white-haired, burly old man turned his eyes with interest and looked at Jian Wushuang. Chapter 45:16. Hey! The white-haired, burly old man and Jian Wushuang's eyes collided in the air. Jian Wushuang only felt that the two thundershots were normal in his eyes. He couldn't help shrinking his pupils and stepped back slightly. When Jian Wushuang opened his eyes to look at the man, there was already a dignity on his face. The white-haired and burly old man in front of him is also a six-marked vanity, and when it comes to strength, I am afraid that he is stronger than the master of refining God. What? The surprise of the white-haired and burly old man was even more serious. He was a virtual man specializing in Lei Fa. Lei Li had already penetrated the body. Although he did not motivate the virtual force just now, his own coercion was violent. Even if it is seen by 3 marks, it can't bear it. But this person is just a slight step back. It seems that the new suzerain that Bahuang is looking for is not a simple character. The white-haired, burly man shook his head, but didn't think deeply. Miss Chuang, this is the Supreme Master. The Lord of the Refining God spoke. Sir Lord. Jian Wushuang heard the words toward the white-haired and burly old man and nodded his head, and then looked at the Lord of the Refining God again and said, Master Sovereign. Well, Wushuang, now you are also going to take over this suzerain and become the refining Suzetsu, and this suzerain has something to say. Refining the prince's head slightly, thinking about it, Shunin said, Miss Chuang, this time the Supreme Master came to refine the sect. This is to take this sovereign to a place where the danger is extremely high, and whether this sovereign can return safely, it is also unknown. We CA&T slay the sacred sect without a headless day. Therefore, this suzerain has decided to convey to you the suzerain's position so that you can temporarily assume the suzerain's position to perform the post of suzerain. May you? The disciples will never die, and they will do their best to protect Shenzong. Jian Wu stepped forward in both directions, said Shenzong. It is good. After hearing this, the Lord of the Refining God couldn't help flashing satisfaction. And then he said, Miss Shuang, before you came, the Lord had summoned the 5 elders and asked them to assist you together. These 5 elders, the elders, are the real pillars of our refining Shenzong. Among them, such as Elder Banshan, they are longer than the reigning masters. They want to stay in the refining of the religious God for a long time. I want you to have 5 of them to help you. Yes, so you don't need to worry too much. After a pause, the Lord of the Refining God continued. In the past, the change of the position of the Supreme Master of the sect, of the religious sect, always declared the universe, and let Wanchao come to congratulate me. This time I took a rush, and I was afraid that I didn't have time to be too solemn. But when I practiced the sect of Sutra, I couldn't perfunctory things at will, and I lost face. Later, the sovereign will send corpses and send them to each of the major schools to invite those who come to the banquet. Witness your ascension ceremony. But there is a place where you need to go for a trip in person and show your sincerity. Where? Lord Sovereign, but it doesn't matter. Jian Wushuang said, The Hades. The Sovereign Lord spit out 3 words. The Hades. Jian Wushuang fainted for a moment. He had come to this virtual universe for so long, and he knew more or less about the division of power in the virtual universe. This Enin Palace is also one of the top forces in the virtual universe, the immortal Taoism, but it has not seemed to have a good relationship with the refining gods. How could he make him a person who would soon become the suzerain and send the invitation in person? It seems that he saw the doubt of Jian Wushuang, and the master of the refining said with a bitter smile, Wushuang, you don't know, this Hades Palace is actually one with our refining Shenzong. It was the corpse of the ancestor of the reigning Shenzong who gained spiritual wisdom and then opened the gate on his own. We refining Shinzong pay attention to the technique of corpse refining, and this Hades is practicing as a corpse. Over the past few years, due to the problems of our philosophy, we have been making a lot of unhappiness in refining Shinzong and Hades. However, when we practice the ancestral teachings of Shinzong, we must go to the other person's gate in person whenever there is a change of suzerain, and invite them to come and see and sign a covenant. The same is true of the Hades, but I am afraid that they will have a new master in charge and will come to us to practice the Shinzong. After the refining god's sovereign said, Jian Wushuang nodded unawarely and replied, "The disciple knows. That disciple will leave today." For Jian Wushuang, this is just a process to go. There is nothing troublesome. Naturally, it is indispensable. Well, this Lord will arrange a disciple to accompany you, and you will set off tomorrow morning. The sovereign Lord said. Immediately, the refining suzerain explained a few more things that he was responsible for after he became suzerain and let Jian Wushuang leave. The white-haired burly old man didn't say a word from beginning to end, but listened silently, and after Jian Wushuang left, he said something meaningful to the refining monarch. 8 shortages. I don't think this person's emotions are good, and his tone is not low or high, but am afraid that he is a meticulous and profound mansion. The Lord of the refining heard a word and did not understand what the white-haired burly old man said. The white-haired burly old man just shook his head and said nothing more. The next morning, after Jian Wushuang had cleaned up, he planned to leave the Lianshanzong and head to the Hades. Separated far away, Jian Wushuang saw a woman in a red dress and a tall figure standing next to the mountain gate and waiting. 9 Musk, Jian Wushuang stepped closer and raised an eyebrow. The follower disciples that the Lord God of Molding said was her. Missed double. The suzerain sent me to take care of you this time, and take care of you along the way. And the suzerain said that he will let me be your next to you and be called by you. 9 Musk lowered his head. Some did not dare to look at the sword, unparalleled, sounded like a mosquito. Since that day in the sovereign's hall, the two have lost contact with each other. In the heart of Joshin, the seemingly kind and gentle but arrogant Master Wushuang has some more unclear words. Fear. That's right, it's fear. Oh, www.novel. Let's go. Sword Wushuang nodded his head and released the bone bird granted to him by the Lord of Refining God. He stepped out and landed on the back of the bone bird. Why did the Lianshan sovereign send Jiu-Shi to accompany him? He knew in his heart that it was because of the conflict between Jian Wushuang and Yen Dan that day in the hall. Although this conflict has nothing to do with Joshin, after all, it is because of Joshin, and the master of the refining wanted to compensate him in disguise. In this regard, Jian Wushuang's heart was quite helpless. Well, when you come back, find a chance to speak with the Lord of the Refining God. Shaking his head, Jian Wushuang saw the 9 musk deer on the giant bone bird, and then stepped gently on his right foot. In a short time, the giant bone bird made a clear whistle, a double-winged one, and immediately turned into a streamer, soared into the sky, and disappeared at the gate of the mountain gate of the Lianshanzong. Chapter 45:17. The giant bone bird is 100 feet wide, and if its wings hang from the sky, every time it is fanned, it tears the void and explodes. The strong wind that it set off directly turned into several thick buckets of tornadoes, like turning the surroundings into a sea of anger and rolling away. 9 Musk was blown a little by this fierce and powerful wind, and his face was pale. Sword saw Wushuang, frowned, waved a virtual force, turned into a mask to resist the violent wind for Joshin. Thanks. 9 Musk glanced at Jian Wushuang gratefully, then lowered her head and gasped slightly. Anyway, Jian Wushuang nodded his head, and then did not answer any more, but sat down on his knees and practiced silently. The strong wind kept blowing Jian Wushuang's hair. Jiu Mu stood behind Jian Wushuang and silently looked at Jian Wushuang's back. He tried to say something, but before he could say anything, he was swallowed again. Until hesitated for a long time, she said softly, "Miss Shuang, what happened that day?" "Sorry, I didn't think so much at that time. I was too selfish to take care of your feelings." Jian Wushuang, who was sitting in front of him, had no expression on Wen Yan's face. His eyes were always closed, but a sigh was made in his mouth. He sword warriors acted in his life, and he will always report. You bully me, and I return you 10 feet. But after all, he was never a narrow-minded man with a small belly. Naturally, he couldn't hold his breath with a small musk deer. He didn't want to deal with 9 musk for one reason. After all, he is not a person of the void universe. Fundamentally, he is destined that his sword Wushuang future will stand opposite these 9 musk deer. Therefore, no matter whether it is the 9 musk deer or the elder wind elder, who is not thin, he does not want to involve too many causes and effects. It wasn't until a long time before Jiu Shifang heard Jian Wushuang's bland words. Anyway, the matter of that day, Wu is not attentive, and you don't need to worry about it. Hearing this, Jiu Mu could not help but tremble at the apex of his heart. It is good. Her voice is higher than that. Subsequently, the two did not speak again. A few days later, a dark blue star field has arrived. In the middle of the star field, a mountain gate is like a monster's beak. Mist double. The underworld has arrived. 9 Musk softly spoke. Jian Wushuang opened his eyes and stood up. Before reaching the Yining Palace completely, a thick body of corpse slammed into the nose, which is much thicker than the refining Shinzong. This is the Hades. Jian Wushuang nodded secretly in his heart. Let's go. Swordless steps, stepping from the skeletal bird, put the skeletal bird away. Jusi followed respectfully behind Jian Wushuang. Walking to the entrance of the gate of the Yining Palace, the disciples of the Yining Palace who were responsible for guarding the gate of the Yining Palace had sharp eyes, and at one glance they saw the sword Wushuang and Joshin, who jumped down from the giant bone bird. Come here is Wushuang, the next sovereign of Lianshinzong. The apprentice of the Yining Temple greeted him quickly and said with a smirk, "It seems to be the Lord of the Refining God, and has already greeted him." "Yes, it's me." Jian Wushuang nodded. Lord Gongzhu ordered me to wait here for a long time. Please go here." Immediately, the disciple of the Hades Palace hurriedly welcomed Jian Wushuang in. Although in recent years, there is some disagreement between the Hades and the Lianshinzong because of the differences in ideas, but the 2 main gates are the same route, close ally. Jian Wushuang is the next suzerain, and to the disciple of the Hades that said, it is a high-profile man who cannot help but be disrespectful. When I walked into the Hades, I was quite alive. I saw a lot of Hades disciples along the way. All of them were exuding a slight halo. At first glance, I was more able to exercise my body refined as an indestructible corpse of all things. After a while, under the leadership of this disciple, the 3 quickly came to a palace with a sloping roof. The disciple of the Yining Palace said, "Histo Lord Shuang, wait a minute or two here. Lord Gongzhu is approaching the first genius of our virtual universe, the contemporary Tianyao Shengtian in Tianyao Holy Land. Later, Lord Palace will welcome you." As soon as the words fell, Jian Wushuang had not spoken yet, but the 9 Musks standing behind him could not help but frown. Theoretically speaking, Jian Wushuang is the next sovereign of the Lianshinzong, so in terms of identity, at least he must be equal to the palace master of the Hades. How can there be sword Wushuang waiting outside this door? However, she didn't say anything when she saw Jian Wushuang. She naturally wouldn't go and speak. "It is good." Jian Wushuang nodded his head and said lightly Thank you. Please go in and let me know. Let the Lord hurry up. The Enin Palace disciple smiled. Inside the hall, two people sat cross-legged across a coffee table. The man on the left is a young man full of brilliance, handsome features, and a white coat that wins blood. At first glance, he can't help but praise the words, "The world is like a jade, and the sun is unique. In the universe, there is a clear stream." The person on the right was covered with white gauze, and only one eye on the right was exposed. The whole person was dead, but his breath was extremely powerful. Master Gongzu, the next sovereign lord of the refining god sect, has come. The Yin Palace disciple, who had previously answered Jian Wushuang, walked quickly to the one-eyed man and leaned down and said softly in his ear, "Oh, it came quite quickly. Let him wait outside and grind his temper first." The one-eyed man raised a brow lightly and then said lightly, "Disciple, understand." The apprentice of the Inin Palace hurriedly resigned, closing the door. The lord of the underworld, but the next sovereign of the refining Shinzong is here. The young man sitting opposite the lord of the Hades asked with a smile, "That's right, it's just a baby doll that doesn't dry out, so don't bother." The lord of the Hades Palace nodded his head, stretched out his arms, poured a cup of spiritual tea for the young man in front of him, and said with a smile, "Come, nephew Tian Yaoxian, let's continue to talk to us. The owner of the palace remembers to see you last time. You just broke through the mark, and it didn't take long before you met again this time. And you have already reached the mark. Such a talent really makes the owner of this palace feel ashamed. The first day of the virtual universe is proud, and it really is a real name." Time passes slowly. Outside the main hall, Jian Wushuang stood with his hands on his back, his face expressionless. It's 9 Musk with a bit of dissatisfaction on his face, and whispered, "Miss Shuang, the lord of the Hades Palace is so slow. I'm afraid that I want to take the opportunity to give you a power first. Let's cut it fast. Chaos. Turn passive into active. Go straight in." Jian Wushuang smiled and replied faintly, "This person is not polite. What is lost is his face, and he will only look small, and we must not be polite." "I see." Juicy nodded, seemingly incomprehensible. 2 more hours passed, and then the disciple of the Yin Palace who was responsible for answering Jian Wushuang had just rushed over and said with a smile, "Sir, wait long? Please, please." Chapter 45:18. Crunch. The gate of the hall of the Hades Palace was pushed from the inside out. A handsome-looking young man in white clothes wins the snow, holding a folding fan, and walking out of the hall with 2 respectful servants. He first glanced at Jian Wushuang, shook his head lightly, and immediately fell on Jiu Musi behind Jian Wushuang. His eyes suddenly flashed, a flash of stunning color flashed. He narrowed his eyes, as if something was moving in his heart, but he didn't say anything, but passed by the side of Jioshin and Jian Wushuang. Lord Tianyao, walk slowly. The Inin Palace disciple respectfully saw off the young man, then looked at Jian Wushuang, reached out, and made a pose in the inside, said with a smile, "Lord Miss Shuang, go. Lord Gongzhu is waiting for you." Jian Wushuang nodded his head and walked in. As soon as Jussi was about to keep up, he saw the apprentice of the Yin Palace step out, stopped her, and said, "This girl stops. My house owner only let the fog His Excellency went in alone, but he didn't tell the younger, but let others in too." Wu Jiumu heard. She could not help but frown. She didn't want to stop here for some reason. Just now that the glorious sun, Yao Yao, looked at her that day made her feel uneasy, and that look she had seen on Yen Dawn's face. "No matter. 9 Musk, you are here waiting for me. No one can hurt you with me here." Qi Jian Wushuang glanced at Jioshin and said lightly, stepped out, and entered the hall. When the Jiozi heard the words of Jian Wushuang, she felt relieved in her heart and stopped saying anything. Creak. The wooden door of the hall was closed again. Jian Wushuang held his head high. Yu Shulin stood and went in one step. The room was slightly dim, and an elder man covered with gray bandages, showing only one eye in his right eye, sat cross-legged in front of a coffee table. This person is the palace master of the Hades. Miss Double, right? Come, sit. He stretched out his hand toward the opposite side of the coffee table, motioning Jian Wushuang to sit down. It is good. Wu Jianwushuang nodded his head and sat opposite the main director of the palace. Miss Shuang, the approximate thing. The guy in the Badlands has summoned the owner of the palace and said that you are the next master of the refining deities. The main theme of the Hades Palace is flat. He reached out and poured a cup of tea for Jian Wushuang and continued to say, we have told Hades about the situation of the Hades and the Lianshan Zone. Although we have some hatred recently, we still haven't as far as Old Death is concerned. After all, we have the same roots and ancestors. We were once the closest people. So, at the beginning of the feast, the lord of this palace will go to you to practice the sect of God personally to witness your ceremony. It is good. Jian Wushuang didn't say much, reached out, and raised his teacup to take a sip. The two chatted a few words casually, and the lord of the Hades palace waved his hand and made a weary path. Well, Wushuang, the lord of the palace, knows that you are now on the throne, and you are busy with business, so I will not leave you much. Later, when this lord arrives at your refining deities, then he will gather with you carefully. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang still didn't know where the owner of the Hades palace was about to rush off. Have a good rest, and rest, then go ahead. After saying this, Jian Wushuang lowered the teacup, got up and stood up, and walked towards the door. Yin Gong Palace Lord, looking at the back of Jian Wushuang, leaving a cold hum in his nose, shook his head disdainfully. He pushed open the wooden door and walked out of the dark room, but Jian Wushuang's brow frowned. 9 musk gone. Master Wushuang, your maid, was invited by the Lord Tianyao to go to the God Wine Pavilion. The Mingyin disciple, who was outside, walked over and said, Son of Heavens, Yao, have you been to God's wine house? Wu Jianshuang heard the words and couldn't help frowning again. Who is Lu Jimu? He thinks he knows a little bit about it. He is the personal maid who the Lord Sect of God has personally ordered to give him. It is impossible for him to suddenly follow someone halfway. And this son of heaven Yao, he also heard that it is the recognized first genius of the virtual universe. The practice is not yet a virtual age, but has already reached the level of 3 marks, and the background is the most from the virtual universe. Tianyao, Holy Land, one of the strong Taoism, can be described as a collection of heaven and earth, and the atmosphere is transported in one body. Let's talk about its status in the virtual universe, even more so than Jian Wushuang in the divine universe, or even worse. Take me to Jian Wushuang frowned and said, Yes. Seeing the coldness in Jian Wushuang's eyes, the disciple of the Yining Palace jumped a brow and quickly took Jian Wushuang towards the God Wine Pavilion. For him, the heavenly sun is a dragon-like figure on that day, and Jian Wushuang is also a behemoth he can't afford to provoke. He was just along the way, but he couldn't help but hint at Jian Wushuang. It's probably that the son of heaven Yao fancy your maid. You quickly become a good friend, and give your servant to the son of heaven Yao, you can just become a good relationship with the son of heaven Yao. With these words, although the disciples of the Yining Palace did not understand so clearly, they generally had such a meaning. He didn't notice that Jian Wushuang's brow was getting colder and colder. A moment later, under the leadership of this Yining disciple, he turned left and right, and Xinjiu Pavilion arrived. Xinjiu Pavilion is an entertainment place built by the Hades Palace. It contains the top variety of wines in the virtual universe. Often, the disciples of the Hades Palace will ask about 3 or 5 friends to go to this god house. Just relax. Cultivation practice. The individual is next to the practice word. He entered Shinjo Pavilion, and this disciple of the Yinin Palace went straight to a box on the second floor with Jian Wushuang. Opening the door of the box, lightly, Jian Wushuang stepped in. There were 3 people at a wine table: sacred son of Tianyao, Jiushan, Yinshan, who is the first disciple of the Yinin Palace, and 2 old slaves who stood behind Tianyao www. Novel. Calm. Seeing Sword Wushuang coming in, Ju Mu's eyes flashed a distress for help, while Tianyao Shengzi slowly opened a smile. Have you been the new sovereign Lord Wushuang? Tong Tianyao Shengzi smiled rather than laughed. Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent, nodded his head and said, "It's me." Sheng Tianyao smiled brightly and stretched out his hand. "Come and come. Sit, Misty, drink a few drinks together." After Yin Wushuang sat down, Yin Shan, the first apprentice of the Yin Palace next to the Son of Heaven, was responsible for pouring him a glass of wine. Mr. Tianyao raised his glass, raised his sword to Wushuang, and narrowed his eyes and smiled. "Miss Shuang, this is your maid called Jiushan, right?" Ben Sheng told her to drink a few glasses of wine. "You should not mind, right?" Jian Wushuang looked at him lightly, without a reply. The disregard of Wu Jian's unparalleled cannot help but let Tianyao Shengzi hold up his glass. Alas, instead of getting angry, he continued, "Come on, everyone toast together." The words fell, and Yinshan, who was in charge of a company, took a quick sip. Jusi looked at Jian Wushuang, and when she was about to speak, Jian Wushuang gave her a slightly restless look. Immediately, Jian Wushuang drank this glass of wine as well. He put down his glass, and Jian Wushuang silently looked at the first day of this famous universe, Tianyao Shengzi. He would like to see what trick this person is going to play. Chapter 45:19. Inside the number 1 box of the Tianji of the God Wine Pavilion, everyone toasted and drank together, but under the seemingly harmonious picture, they couldn't hide a trace of coldness. That's right. Tian Yao Shengzi looked at Jian Wushuang and Jiu Mu, both drinking a glass of wine. A smile appeared on his face. Everyone in the world says that I am an immortal, but the radical next to the immortal is the first person. This son of sun is a candid, uninhibited man who loves rivers and mountains' beauties alone and a glass of fine wine. This time, the son of sun first said clearly no one can run the virtual force to melt this drink and force it out. We must accompany Ben Shengzi to get drunk for 3,600 games. How? As soon as this remark was finished, Yinshan, the chief disciple of the Yin Palace who was in charge of companionship, quickly echoed, "Master Sheng is right. This time, Lord Sun has finally come to our palace, and we must accompany you to drink." "Okay, you kid, you're on the right track." Tianyao Shengzi stretched out his hand and smiled and touched the top of the Yin mountain, as if he was petting the puppies who sold his goodies, and then stretched out the glass again and raised it to Jiu Mu. "Come on, 9 musk, and have a drink with Ben Shengzi." Jiushi heard that she was already crimson and blushing and flashed a moment of hesitation. This divine wine is made from 100 brewed fragrant fruits, which is specially used for drinking of trace-level virtuosos. However, she is a star-rated virtuoso, and she has already been a little bit alcoholic. He wanted to refuse, but when Jiushu saw a seeming smile, in fact his eyes were bleak and dazzling. She had figured out the identity of the young man in front of her, the holy son of Tianyao Holy Land, the holy son of Tianyao. The first day of the universe that swept the world is proud. Tianyao Holy Land is one of the strongest immortal dharmas in the void universe. There are more than 6 marked virtual lords in the Holy Land. Although refining God is also one of the top forces, it is worse than Tianyao Holy Land not a little bit. This is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that now the refining suzerain is about to step down, and Jian Wushuang will become the new suzerain. Once she offended Tianyao, it was tantamount to offending Tianyao. At that time, not to mention how the Tianyao Holy Land might dominate the sect of sects, I am afraid that a sentence will be released in the universe. Gurus! Thinking of this, the Nine Musk silver teeth bite and raised the glass to drink. Suddenly, a flame seemed to burn in her body. Jiushin only felt that the blood in her body was boiling, her head was dizzy, and she was extremely uncomfortable. That's right. Tian Yao Shengzi smiled with satisfaction and raised his glass again. Unexpectedly, the girl of Nine Musk has a low profile, and the amount of alcohol is really good. Come, give Ben Shengzi a face, and another glass. Seeing this, Jiushin finally couldn't help it. His face changed slightly, but there was still a strong smile on Qiao's face, and he said, "Master, I can't really drink." "Can't drink?" After hearing this, Mr. Tianyao's eyes narrowed slowly, the smile on his face converged, and his voice became cold. "Nine Musk girls, it seems that you don't give this face to Ben Shengzi?" Nine Musk heard a smile on her face. "Sir, I don't mean this." As soon as she was about to explain, Tianyao interrupted her explanation and continued to say, "Nine Musk girls, even if you do think about yourself, you have to think about the gate behind you. Think about your master, Wu Shuang." Hearing this, Jiu Shijiao trembled. This naked threat has become apparent. Nine Musk glanced at the expressionless, silent swordsman beside him, and couldn't help but utter a grin in his heart. From the beginning to the end, no matter whether she is refining Shenzong or outside, she is in the hands of a great man. "I drink." Quivering and reaching out his hand, Jiushu took his glass and prepared to drink it. Seeing this, Tianyao Shengzi brought a mild smile on his face again, nodded with satisfaction, and Yinshan, who was next to him, also had an unpleasant smile on his face. What Tianyao Shengzi was going to do, of course, he knew very well. Snapped. At this time, Nine Musk, holding a wine glass, preparing to drink a right hand, was grabbed by a big hand with a strong force from the big bones of the big hands, so that she could not move at all. Jumu looked up dully, only to see Jian Wushuang's sharp-edged side face, indifferent and indifferent. Next moment, a cold, low voice came from Jian Wushuang's mouth. "Your face." "You rubbish, I hit 10 with one hand, and you also deserve to be faced on a certain side of the fog." As soon as this remark was made, the audience was shocked. The companion Yinshan had a shocking expression on his face. He didn't expect that this Wushuang from the refining Shenzong was so presumptuous. Does he know who is the Son of Heaven, who is sitting in front of him? Bold. Immediately, as soon as he slammed the table, he wanted to teach Tianya Shengzi the lesson in front of him. However, before he could act, Jian Wushuang's eyes rose sharply by 3 inches, and he looked at him. Boom! Instantly, Yinshan just felt a big horror between him and his life. Jian Wushuang's cold eyes looked like 2 magical swords that split the sky and shattered the endless sky, and shot into him, kill him thousands of times. Alas! Yinshan fell to the ground with a buttock, and a chill rushed from the back to the top of his head, like a falling ice cellar. On another look, his entire back was wet with cold sweat. And Tianyao Shengzi, with a smile on his face, the smile hardened. Immediately, Tianyao Shengzi's face was gloomy to the extreme. "Miss Shuang, even your sovereign lord refining did not dare to talk to this son. Are you trying to die? Knelt down and apologize, and donate this maid to Ben Shengzi. Ben Shengzi can treat you as just now." After speaking, the Son of Heaven, Yao Yao, got up and stood up, looking down at the sword, unparalleled. However, he had just stood up and had not stood upright. "I kneel." Jian Wushuang sneered. The chaotic, domineering body urged. His right hand suddenly stretched out and re-patted on the head of Tianyao Shengzi. Kneel down! Boom! Endless power erupted from the palms of swordless pairs. Tianyao Shengzi only felt like a million mountains came down, and the whole person fell to the ground fiercely, kneeling directly on the floor with a spider-like crack. For today's Jian Wushuang, as long as he does not enter the Invincible Supreme, no one is his enemy. On this day, the Holy Sun, but 3 marks, is worse than Luo Ming, his big head of the Red Whale Gang. Dare to pray in front of him? Little Lord! Master Santa! The 2 old slaves guarding the door of the box suddenly became furious when they saw this. As soon as they were about to kill Jian Wushuang, they saw Jian Wushuang's voice indifferent. Taro! Click! A void crack split from the back of Jian Wu's body, and the Taro corpse shrouded in a wide black robe stepped forward, stretched out his hands, and blasted towards the 2 old slaves.